So looks like it's 7 o'clock. You got everything organized for all the participants and so on, Karen, that we can get started?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order then tonight. Welcome everyone to our April 26th, 2021 regular meeting of council. And the first thing we have to deal with is to approve the agenda. So I have a recommendation here moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry, that the agenda for April 26th, 2021 regular meeting of council be accepted and passed. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Then we'll move on to disclosure of pecuniary interest. So is there any declarations of pecuniary interest on anything on tonight's agenda? I don't have any. Councillor McCabe?
None.
Councillor Hearn?
No.
Councillor Burke?
I will declare a pecuniary interest on the Sobeys portion of the public meeting.
Okay. But the council,
can you just state what your interest is?
Yes. So I work for Sobeys, so I'm going to abstain from those discussions.
Thank you.
okay, thank you. Councillor Yake?
Yes, I will declare pecuniary interest in the sewage allotment recommendations for the Wellington Street East development.
Okay.
And what is your interest?
My wife and I own a unit.
Okay, so just to clarify, will you be declaring an interest on the deputations as well as the operations report, or just a part of the operations report?
Just a part of the operations report. Just that particular. I don't know how are we going to do it. Is that going to be broke out into two different recommendations?
Yes, we can do that. You said the Wellington Street East project?
Yes.
So we could split the recommendation on the Mount Forest allocations and simply split out that one particular applicant.
And then you can vote on that separately.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, thank you.
Okay. Okay, with that said, I see I'm on for County Council update this evening. I just have a couple of items I wanted to draw attention to. One is leaf and yard waste. You may be aware that the county is doing its first leaf and yard waste pickup in the spring this week here in Wellington North. And just a reminder too that it's free drop-off of leaf and yard waste at Riverston from now till the fall, anytime as well. So not only is there pickup in the urban areas starting this week, and then once a month till I think October or November, I just can't remember the date for sure, and free drop-off during that time at Riverston as well. So just wanted to remind everybody of that. And then I also wanted to talk about a topic we probably hear lots about, but there's lots of conflicting and confusing information, and that's around vaccinations for COVID-19. As you're probably aware, public health has been doing a lot of the vaccinating up until recently, and people can pre-register and get their appointments through public health. They've been delivering the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines, both at clinics in Fergus, which runs pretty much every week, and then some mobile clinics have been moving around various parts of northern Wellington County at Arthur, Mount Forest, Drayton, or Palmerston. So there's when people are eligible to be vaccinated, public health, if they've pre-registered, public health will contact them for an appointment, and then they can choose where they want to go get that vaccine. There's also a couple of other channels of where people can get vaccinated, and that one is through the local pharmacies. both Walsh's and Arthur Mount Forest are eligible to deliver vaccines, and some family doctors are also doing some vaccinations. So really wanted to talk primarily though about the activity that public health is. The county and local municipalities are both supporting that effort. County has redeployed some staff on a full-time basis to assist with those clinics. Local municipalities have been offering some volunteer staff as needed to facilitate those clinics, as well as providing the space for all of those. All of those public health sponsored clinics are being housed in local municipalities' spaces, primarily in the arenas or community center type settings. There's, you know, we're making progress on vaccination of the population. But of course, vaccine supply is the big issue. However, we did get some news today that we're supposed to be getting more vaccine throughout the month of May and coming to our region. And there's a good possibility, if that carries on as intended, we could reach the 60% of the eligible population vaccinated by the end of May. And that's kind of an important milestone, because at 60%, then easing of public health measures can start to begin, and we can start to get our lives somewhat back to normal, or at least headed in that direction. So encourage everyone, please share this information widely so that members of our community can get vaccinated as soon as possible. If we've got the supply available, let's get as many people vaccinated as possible so that we can get everything back to, or start getting our lives back to a more normal place, and go from there. Again, vaccine supply is the biggest issue, and if that problem eases up, then we could hit that target. And while that may seem a distance away, it can roll around pretty quickly. So, and maybe by then the weather will be better and we can spend more time outside and enjoy some of that as well. So I'd be happy to take any questions on those topics or any others if council should have some.
I don't think so. I'm good.
Oh,
I'm good, Andy. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. So with that said, we've got a presentation this evening from Mount Forest Block parents. Barb, I see, is going to share the presentation with us. Are you with us, Barb?
I'm going to share the screen, Barb. You're on mute.
Is that better?
That is much better. There you
Okay.
go. I will share my screen. Or do you
And
want
do you want me to just,
do you want to do a bit of an introduction, and then I will share the screen?
my name is Barb Lee. I've been a resident of Mount Forest for probably 25 years now. We're trying to get a block parent organization started in Mount Forest. It's been in Canada for many years, but it's not here. So we'd like to bring it here. So we've gotten a committee together, and we've got approval from the OPP. Now we're just hoping for your approval as well. So to save me from talking and making myself look foolish, here's a slideshow to make it easier. And I guess Karen will advance it. You don't want me to read it, do you?
You can present however you'd like. You just tell me when
I'll
you
let
want to
them read
advance
it.
the slides.
Okay, next. 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 Just to keep in mind that block parent isn't necessarily just for children. It's for anybody that's in trouble. So seniors, adults. Next. Next, please. We realize we can't eliminate risks totally, but we can try and prevent it as much as we can to make it as safe as possible for everybody. Next. Next. Okay, next. I don't know if I read as fast as they do. The one question that we've come across a lot in the last couple of weeks getting this up and running is people are asking about the sign in the window. So we have this in here because I'm sure probably you guys are wondering about the same thing. How do you know about that a sign is actually legit? Well, this will show you how you can tell. Okay, next. Okay. Okay. All right. Next, please. Next. And there you have it. So now if you have questions, I can try to answer them, but this is all new to me too. So I don't know if I'll know all the answers, but I'll certainly try. And if not, I can find the right answer for you.
Okay, thanks, Barb. Any questions from members of council? Dan, go ahead.
I don't know, I might have missed it, Barb, but was there a block parent program in Mount Forest many, many years ago?
I think there was many years ago, but there hasn't been for quite some time. I'm not sure what happened to the program. It's my understanding that the volunteers just weren't there. And because of that, it just wasn't working anymore.
Okay.
Any other questions? Sherry, go ahead.
Yes, so thank you, Barb, for the presentation and the information. Just wondering, how are things going? What kind of feedback, or is there a lot of momentum to get this
There's
going?
actually a fair bit of interest. I have people stopping me on the street to where we are exactly with all this. We do have a Facebook group that we've started. It's kind of stalled because we have to follow steps before we can proceed all the way in. And you guys were our final step.
Thank you.
Steve?
Thanks for this, Barb. It's great to see it back up and running. I can remember seeing the block parent signs in some windows in Mount Forest. And I know this is in its infancy for Mount Forest. How can we get this into the town of Arthur as well?
Somebody else asked me this too, except about Harrison. And my suggestion is we wait, let's get this going first. And then when you get the people in Arthur or the people in Harrison or the people wherever that want to do it, then we can help them set their own group up. But right now we need to focus on here.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Barb? Okay, again, Barb, thanks for coordinating this. I think this is a real value for our community members, especially for our youth, to have an alternative if something need should arise. And I think you're looking for a recommendation from us, so I'll just read the proposed resolution here and see if council has anything further. So I have a recommendation here, be it resolved that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North endorses the block parent program in the Township of Wellington North, which I believe is the endorsement you need to carry the program forward.
Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Do I have Karen?
Steve, so the resolution approves a block parent program in Wellington North. So if, this gets up and running and they decide to start one in Arthur, this resolution would be in support of that as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Karen. Any other questions or comments on this? I guess I should get a mover and a seconder for it. Moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry. Any final discussion? Okay, I'll call the vote then. All those in favor?
Awesome. Great.
That's carried. Thank you, Barb. It looks like you've got a ringing endorsement, so
Thank you very
Good.
much.
good luck on your next steps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have some public meetings to deal with, so we need to recess our council meeting to deal with those public meetings under the Planning Act. So I have a recommendation here moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North recess the April 26, 2021 regular meeting of council for the purpose of holding a public meeting under the Planning Act for Sobeys public meeting, Trudy Matusnik and Jamie Cox public meeting, and Eastridge Landing Phase 3 public meeting. All those in favor? So we're recessed. I'll just switch my paperwork here. Okay, so I'll call the public meeting to order, and we'll ask for a disclosure of pecuniary interest. So we have 3 applications. I have none on any of the applications. Councillor Burke.
Sorry, yes, with the first one with regard to Sobeys as declared previously.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Yake,
No,
Councillor Hearn,
No.
Councillor McCabe.
I have none.
Okay, thank you. And I think I already said that I don't have any. So our first owner applicant in this case, so Councillor Burke, you'll be, you turned your camera off already. So the owner applicant in this case is Sobeys. The land subject to the proposed amendment is described as concession 1, part lot 33, part lot 1, lot 2 to lot 6. Wait a minute. Part Duke Street, registered plan 60R1937, parts 1 to 4, concession 1. Part lot 33, registered plan 60R3404, part 1, concession 1, part lot 33, part lot 32, division 3, registered plan 60R3459, parts 1 and 2. The lands are municipally known as 437 to 445, 503 and 515 Main Street in Mount Forest, Township of Wellington North. The lands are 2.9 hectares in size. Location of the subject lands is in the map attached to the agenda. The purpose and effect of the proposed amendment is to rezone the subject lands from highway commercial C2 zone and shopping center commercial C4 zone to a site-specific highway commercial C2 exception zone and shopping center commercial C4 exception zone to facilitate the development of a new retail food store, and a restaurant with drive-through. Site-specific standards, including revised setback and parking requirements, are also being proposed. The existing building uses are proposed to remain. How was notice given for this public meeting?
Notices were mailed to the property owners within 120 meters of the property and mailed to the applicable agencies. Signage was posted on the property on April 1st.
Okay, thank you. Curtis, I see you're with us tonight. Can you give us a report on this application, please?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Lennox and members of council.
We're here tonight for a public meeting regarding zoning bylaw amendment, file number 1021 for Sobeys. This has been filed on the properties known as 437 to 445, 503, and 515 Main Street North in Mount Forest. The purpose of the proposed amendment is to rezone the subject lands to a site-specific exceptions to permit the development of a new retail food store and a restaurant with a drive-through on the property. And other site-specific relief has also been requested related to parking standards and building setbacks. I've prepared an information report that is included in the council agenda, which provides background information and an overview of the application. The County of Wellington official plan designates the property as highway commercial. In the highway commercial area, the predominant uses include commercial uses serving the traveling public, and also uses that are not considered compatible with the downtown area. Certain commercial uses, due to their nature, require large sites to accommodate their associated buildings, storage, or parking requirements. And these are either not available or suitable within the downtown area, or also considered appropriate in the highway commercial designation. So just to clarify, the property I'm referring to is actually 3 properties currently. It is split zoned. The PV Mart and beer store portion of the property, I'll call the southern half, is zoned C4, which permits a food store. However, the balance of the property, or the north half, which is now vacant, is zoned C2, and this portion of the property does not permit a food store. A draft bylaw has been prepared by the applicant and is attached to my report for information. Just to note, the application has been circulated to agencies and to town departments for comments. At this point, we've only received comments from Enbridge and from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority, who have no objections. To date, no written public comments have been received. And finally, the applicant's planner is in attendance tonight, and he's prepared a further presentation for council and for the public as well. And that concludes my introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Curtis. I see we have Eric here to, on behalf of Sobeys, working for GSP. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you bear with me, I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully it works. Can everybody see this?
We can.
All right. All right. Well, Mr. Mayor, members of council, thank you for hearing our presentation. And with me, I have Phil Busby from Sobeys, as well as Zinli Tu from RJ Burnside, who's the traffic consultant on this application. So as Curtis has mentioned, we're planning consultants for Sobeys for the subject property. And on their behalf, we submitted zoning bylaw amendment applications for their site in the northern part of Mount Forest. It's bounded by Industrial Drive to the north and just north of Silgo Road East, or west, sorry. And it's on the west side of Main Street, or Highway 6. The surrounding land uses are to the north and west are primarily industrial and business uses. There is the emergency services building immediately north of the western portion of the Sobeys parcel along the Industrial Drive frontage. Across the street, across Main Street, is existing commercial development that has been developed by the No Frills and Canadian Tire, as well as a mobile service station. And then across Main Street, across from the developed portion, developed with the PV Mart and the beer store, is residential use. And along Sligo Road, west, backing onto the property, are single detached residential uses. So the site's approximately 2.9 hectares in size. And as I mentioned, and it has been developed by there's an existing beer store, a PV Mart, formerly the TSC store. And actually before that, it was a food store as well, for those of you who can remember back that far. And there's a horse and buggy parking stall as well. The northern part of the site is primarily vacant. It does have some food truck accommodation there. And the existing access is right along this portion, which basically corresponds to the northern part of the PV Mart. So there's one access out there. For those of you that are familiar with the site, the parking extends all the way out to the Main Street road allowance right now, and there's an existing sidewalk along the entire length of the Main Street frontage, right adjacent to the traveled portions of the Main Street roadway. As part of the zoning bylaw amendment applications, we provided a site plan to illustrate where the Foodland would go. And what's being proposed is a new retail food store, which is Foodland, of approximately 2,525 square meters, or approximately 27,000 square feet. And that's going to be sited adjacent and attached to the existing PV Mart along the north side. Additionally, there's the restaurant that's proposed. It's a drive-through. I don't think a tenant has been identified as yet, but we've shown it here as an illustrated location. And the existing horse and carriage parking structure is proposed to be demolished and a new one built here along Industrial Drive, the frontage along here. And in addition, the existing access located approximately here is proposed to be removed, and the new northern access is located here opposite Mount Forest Drive. In addition, there's a new southerly access that's just to the north of the beer store that's being proposed. All right. And in addition, looking at the loading areas are going to be to the rear of the buildings, right here. So the truck movements will coordinate through this area here. So the PV Mart is going to be reconfigured slightly to move their loading areas and this outdoor storage area down at the southern part of the site. As Curtis indicated, the lands are designated as urban center in the, as Mountain Forest is in the County of Wellington official plan, and lands are designated highway commercial. The current zoning, and here I've overlaid the zoning map over top of the site plan. The northern portion is zoned C2, which does not permit, it permits a variety of commercial uses, including restaurants and accessory uses. And also, as Curtis mentioned, the C2 zone does not permit a retail food store. The southern portion of the site is zoned shopping center commercial C4, which permitted uses include beer store, retail food store, shopping center, shopping mall, accessory uses, buildings, and structures. It's noted too that the major portion of the proposed Foodland building is within the C4 zoning. So the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, just walking through things, would it proposes to zone the C2 portion of the site with a highway commercial exemption zone, so a site-specific exemption zone, and the northern portion, or the southern portion, a site-specific C4X zone. And what it involves is, for the C2 site specific, is allowing retail store as a permitted use, the maximum floor area of 5,000 square feet. That's just a carry forward of what's permitted in the C4 zoning. Also proposing 241 parking spaces applicable to the entire site. It's noted that this would be a one space per 19.2 square meters based on the site plan, whereas the current zoning requirement is one space per 18 square meters. So this would be a reduction in the zoning requirement based on the site plan of 16 parking spaces. Additionally, it was highlighted in terms of some discussions with Wellington County staff, because there's a small portion of frontage on Industrial Drive at the northern portion of the site. From a zoning interpretation perspective, that would be considered the front yard. So we want to modify our request to consider Main Street as the front yard for purposes of the overall zoning, and that's part and parcel because of the potential consolidation of the properties into one site. Additionally, we're looking at reducing the front yard setback for parking. It's required to be 1.5 meters from the road right of way, whereas we're looking at proposing basically a half meter, 0.55 meters from that site, or from that front yard lot line, which is actually subject to a 3-meter road widening through the site plan approval process. So there will be additional taking for the planned road width of the Main Street frontage, but that will the site plan also looks at moving the sidewalk back through the width of the property, away from the traveled portion of the road, and also landscaping would be provided in the widened right of way. So the reduced setback for the front yard parking would be actually less of an impact than what is currently situated on the beer store and PV Mart parking, which is right up to the paved portions of the road right of way. Additionally, we're looking at reducing the interior yard setback for the proposed horse and buggy parking, which is 1.5 meters. The rationale for this is it's an accessory building, and where the location of that new structure is actually has a fairly wide landscaped portion of the road widening along or the road right of way in Industrial Drive, as well as the emergency services building lot. There's the triangular tapering of that lot, which provides some additional setback to the actual traveled portion of the Industrial Drive roadway. And also what we're looking at requesting is that the separate zoning requirements for the proposed site-specific C2 and C4 zones are not required to be met on the individual zoned layers, but they would all be considered as one lot, both the C2 site-specific and the C4 site-specific. So proportions of the the yard setback, coverage, gross floor area, parking would all be considered as one zone as part of these applicable zoning provisions. And the similar requirements are being proposed and requested through the site-specific C4 zone as well. And just here's a zoning map that's that identifies what the proposed zones would be, just in terms of a draft schedule. Now, as part of the zoning bylaw amendment applications, in addition to the conceptual site plan, there's some additional supporting studies that were submitted. A functional servicing and stormwater management report was prepared by KWA Site Development Consulting, and it looked at the servicing and stormwater management, and they concluded that the water and sanitary servicing infrastructure within the Main Street right-of-way can support the proposed development on the site. and that they also concluded that the stormwater quality and quantity control measures can be provided on site. In addition to the servicing study, a transportation and parking study was prepared by R.J. Burnside and submitted for review. And they concluded that, they assessed a lot of the intersections and areas within their study area, and they developed the terms of reference with the township's transportation consultants. And they concluded that most of the movements within the study area intersections are forecasted to operate with excess levels of capacity. They did note that under future 2026 conditions, that the westbound left and right movements at Mount Forest Drive opposite the site, opposite the proposed new northern intersection, may exceed some capacity and experience queues with respect to their to what they're experiencing now. However, the issue they identified is not attributable to the Sobeys proposal. It's due to the existing volumes from the Canadian Tire No Frills site and developments across the other side of Main Street. And they recommend that the township continue to monitor this to identify if there's any future intersection improvements and signalization that would be required. Oh, and also as part of the traffic impact study, they did do a signal warrant analysis at this intersection under the future 2026 conditions. And they concluded that under the methodology that the warrants for signals weren't warranted in their analysis, even with the consideration of the trips from the opposite side of Main Street. I note too that this portion of Main Street, or Highway 6, is under MTO jurisdiction as part of the connecting link as well. With respect to parking, R.J. Burnside reviewed the proposed reduction in parking of 16 spaces. And based on the work and review of their work that they've done on previous parking demand surveys for similar retail development, they found that the parking proposed is generally, the supply of parking on the Sobeys site proposed here is generally higher than the demands that are required and determined elsewhere through their assessment of similar sites. And in their opinion, the proposed 241 parking spaces still reflects a higher than anticipated level of parking than what would be required based on their surveys of similar commercial projects. So Burnside concluded in their analysis that they're of the opinion that the parking requirements being sought by the zoning bylaw amendment application are supportable. So based on our review, we're of the opinion that the proposed applications are in conformity with the applicable planning policies set out in the provincial policy statement, the growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe, as well as the County of Wellington official plan. The applications will facilitate a more efficient use of the vacant lands owned by Sobeys and facilitate the development of a modern food land to meet the needs of Mount Forest and surrounding community. The property can be adequately serviced for the proposed development, and the forecasted traffic and proposed parking were assessed by Burnside, and they identified no significant concerns with the proposal. We do note that a site plan application is intended to be filed and subject to review to address and identify any specific design considerations and more detailed aspects of the development. And it is hoped that a site plan application will be filed shortly after council approval of the zoning bylaw amendment. They're anxious to proceed as quickly as possible. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available, as well as the other members of the Sobeys team that are on the call, to respond to any questions that council or the public may have. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Eric. I believe next step would be to ask if there's any further correspondence been received in respect to this application.
Nothing other than what Curtis has mentioned and what is listed on the agenda. If I could just ask Eric, could you stop screen sharing?
Yes.
Thank you. There, we can see everybody. Yep. No, there's been nothing further received other from Enbridge and Saugeen Conservation.
Okay, thank you. Anyone, so the bylaw will consider it at a future regular council meeting following this public meeting. It's not being considered this evening. Persons wishing notice of the passing of the bylaw must submit a written request. With that, I'll open the floor for any questions or comments. And Eric, I may ask you, or depending on how the questions unfold, we may ask you to put that site plan back up so that we can refer to it if that's okay with you. But we'll launch into some questions here before we get too far down the road. Steve.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Eric, and thanks for joining our meeting tonight. I guess my question is, and it's always a question in that area, is traffic, and it said that there was not warranted to have any traffic signals or the like. How, and I guess my question is, how did you do your study and when did you do it? And you should come up and see it on a long weekend.
Mm-hmm. Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, we have RJ Burnside on the line, but I can just give you a general overview, and then I'll ask Cindy to chime in if I get it wrong, and if she can provide some further indications. So my understanding is that they recently did some traffic analysis. They looked at some pre-COVID numbers and available traffic counts for this. They did undertake, as I mentioned, the traffic signal warrant calculation in accordance with the applicable standards, and they determined that under the operating conditions, the analysis didn't warrant signals, but that's why they had indicated as well that they recommend that the township continue to monitor the ongoing status of that intersection and operations of that intersection to determine if there are future signal warrants. And as I mentioned before, this area is a connecting link, and it's under the jurisdiction of MTO. And my understanding is that MTO is very, in the box, meaning that they need to see analysis that warrants the traffic signals. And Zinli, do you have any further comments?
Do a follow-up through you, Mayor?
Just hang on, Steve.
Yeah, no, Eric covered it pretty well. Just to add on to that, the two criteria that we use to determine whether or not signals are warranted is delay to cross traffic and delay to cross the main street, both of which did not meet the criteria. Therefore, it was not meet the MTO justification. And yeah, as Eric mentioned, it is considered the connecting link. So MTO does want to see that analysis and the numbers to back up the signals.
Okay, thank you. Karen, did you have something?
Yes, we missed the part where we open the floor to the public for questions and comments, and we have quite a few people in the meeting as an attendee.
Okay. So maybe we'll just backtrack and make sure we get the public comments first. I was going to do them all together, but that's okay. Do you have a list of those who want to participate in this, Karen?
Well, what I'm going to ask, I see Paul, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your last name, has his hand raised. If anyone else on that list has the ability and knows how to do that and you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. I'm going to go down the list. There are 26 attendees that are going to want to speak. Oh, that may want to speak. So I have to just check with them all. So Mr. Deneen, did you want to speak to the meeting? To this application? Bill Deneen? You're on mute.
No, I do not.
Thank you. You can just put yourself back on mute. Paul, I see your hand. I know you do. Brian Padfield, did you want to speak at the meeting to this application? You're still on mute, Brian. Okay. Amanda, did you want to speak to this application?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Thank you. Campbell, did you want to speak to the application?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Thank you. Curtis Gordon, did you want to speak to this application?
Nope, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Brian, I saw you were unmuted there for a minute. Did you want to speak to this application?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane Deneen, did you want to speak to this application? You're on mute, Diane.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Dawn, did you want to speak to this application? Okay. Mr. Cox, did you want to speak to this application?
No, thank you.
Okay. Jim, did you want to speak to this application? Ken Matthews, did you want to speak to this application?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Kent Benson, did you want to speak to the application?
No,
Thank you. Kim? Gone. Oh. No, thank you. Okay, sorry. Kyle?
No, thank you.
Okay. I think Pavneet, I believe, are you, Pavneet, did you want to speak to this application or are you here for a deputation? No, thank you. Okay, thank you. Penny, did you want to speak to the application?
I was just wondering if the application is successful. Is there any proposal to have a grocery store remaining in the center of town for those that don't have access to vehicles? Sorry, did you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Oh.
Who are you posing your question to?
I don't know anybody that would like to answer.
Through you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, it's Phil from Sobeys here. I should probably address that question. Our plan is, as part of, if we are successful, as part of constructing this new food store at our existing site is not to continue with the operating a second food store. So the new food store would replace the old food store. That's not to say that the owner of that site cannot backfill that with another similar use, but Foodland or Sobeys does not have any plans to operate a second grocery store in town.
Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Okay, so I brought, who did I just bring in? He had his hand written. Okay, so let's go down the list again. There's still lots of people on the list. Penny, Rick, did you want to speak to this application?
No, I have no questions.
Thank you. Robert, did you want to speak to this application? Okay, Paul, I know you want to speak. I've moved you into the meeting. So if you can start your video and you can speak.
Okay. So, Paul, you have a question? You able to hear me? I'm not seeing him. Karen, is he?
He's in the meeting and he's off mute, but I can't, he doesn't have his video on. I can't hear him.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll leave him in the meeting. Sandy, did you want to speak to this application?
No, thanks. No,
Thank you.
thanks.
And Turnbull, did you want to speak to this application?
No, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so that's the list. Sorry, Michelle, were you wanting to speak to the application?
No, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we were
So Paul is
struggling.
here. Paul's in the meeting. I've moved into a participant, but I don't hear anything from him.
Okay. Well, we can come back. I'll check in with him later. Is he the only other one that, other than Penny, who had any questions or comments?
Yeah, I've been down the list. The people that I didn't ask, I know are on the list to speak to for the deputations. We have no one else for the other applications.
Okay. So we'll come back to members of council and then we'll check in with Paul before we close things off to make sure we got everything covered. So Steve, I know you had a follow-up question. Thanks for waiting.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for going through that, Karen, as well. Zin Lee, I guess my question is more for you. I believe you were on the traffic end of things. What are the calculations or the, I guess, the measurements that you go through to come up with the results of not having to have traffic signals up there?
It's largely based on peak hour volumes. So in this case would be weekday PM peak hour. And as Eric mentioned previously, we had used counts prior to COVID and even applied an additional 2% growth factor to projected 2021 conditions. And the two criteria, as I mentioned, was delay to cross traffic. So basically on the pedestrian end, and then the delay to cross Main Street, which in this case would be Main Street, yeah.
All right, thanks. I think that anyone on council here and even in our public up in that area, the traffic's horrendous up there to begin with. Has there been any thought just to go and have I guess, an entrance off of Industrial Drive instead of having it off of Highway 6?
the access off Industrial Drive had been posed to us, but like looking at the traffic analysis, it appears that the application is supportable, and the development proposed in the site plan is supportable without the necessity of getting an access off of Industrial Drive.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Matt, did you have some comments you'd want to share?
Yeah, just through you, Mayor Lennox, and I guess directed to the traffic engineer. Book 12, the MTO's Book 12 has 7 justifications. Did your report look at all 7 justifications that are in that Book 12?
Well, for one of the justifications, we would need the 8-hour pedestrian volumes, but because we had the peak hour volumes for PM, that's what we based the analysis off of, which is the more conservative justification as well. And it was noted that it did not meet justifications.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Yake?
Thank you, Mayor Lennox. Eric, thank you for the presentation. Very good, well put together. You had me until you got right to the second last point, where it says no significant traffic concerns related to this development. There are significant traffic concerns in that area as it is. We knew that when Canadian Tire built there. We've been looking at it since then, and now we're talking about adding a grocery store with hundreds of cars and a drive-through restaurant. There is significant traffic concerns right now, and this is just going to add to the issue. So, with you know, all due respect to RJ Burnside, I think that their traffic study is wrong, and I think that it needs to be, we as a township need to address this on our own. Like I said, you had me right until we got to that point, and I've been harping on traffic concerns in that area for the last 10 years. And now we're going to try to add this up there, and you're saying that it won't be significantly, it won't change significantly the traffic flow up there. I can't believe it. So, I mean, until we get the situation straightened out that we're happy with as a municipality, then I'm not in support of the amendment. And if that takes longer to get done, so be it. But this needs to be addressed.
Okay. Eric, did you want to?
Well, I'm just looking at the traffic report, and I understand that there's been concerns identified, throughout the last number of years with that particular intersection, and I think it's because of it is within the MTO jurisdiction, that's probably a bit of a a stumbling block, because they were very rigid in terms of the interpretation of the signal warrant analysis. So as I said, Burnside had recommended ongoing monitoring of the intersection, post development, and that might provide some additional justification once everything's up and operational for MTO to consider signal warrants, because they're responsible for the ongoing maintenance and operation of those traffic signals, given it's their road at that part. And I'm not sure, Cindy, if you have any other comments to provide.
Yeah, we are coordinating with the township. I had sent over some of my feedback on their comments as well regarding that particular intersection across Mount Forest Drive, and there will be some further discussion on some improvements, because as Eric had mentioned previously, there was concerns regarding that westbound traffic. So the vehicles coming out of Canadian Tire and No Frills. So we did propose potentially like a westbound left at that approach as well, and that's something that we need to discuss further with the township on.
Okay. Mike, did you want to add something at this point?
Through you, Mayor Lennox. Yeah, I just wanted to note for all of council that we have shared the traffic impact study that RJ Burnside prepared with representatives from the MTO. I think you can tell based on the comments, there's some uncertainty in terms of whether or not the MTO will support the idea of signalization or something else at that intersection because of the warrant requirements, or whether or not they won't support that. So we don't have those comments back yet from the MTO. We're certainly hopeful to get them in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I think that's part of the issue that Eric has done well to address, is that the MTO, if you're not meeting those warrants, don't necessarily support the idea of intersections, whether it's street lights or whatever, if the warrants aren't met. But we've asked them to take a look at it, and we've expressed, as Councillor Yake has expressed, our concerns with the traffic already in that area with the MTO. So we're hopeful about those comments and what they will lead to, but we don't have yet.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to go to Paul. Is it Hruska?
Hruska, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Paul Hruska, I work at Vintex. I'm also very concerned about the traffic and the impact of this intersection at the end of Mount Forest Drive. We have a lot of tractor trailer traffic in and out of our facility, in addition to the tractor trailer traffic from No Frills and Canadian Tire. And it is very difficult to get out off of Mount Forest Drive onto Main Street at times. And I think this will just make it worse.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. I think maybe if I could just paraphrase my concerns, or maybe I can summarize the concerns represented by other members of council as well, is that while this may not, the changes may not meet the warrants that MTO sets out, I think it meets the warrants that our community members expect, and that's the balancing act we're trying to balance here, is that we're getting significant feedback that there are problems with the traffic movements in that area. Paul just highlighted that as one of the businesses is noticing that. So I think we're probably going to need some further review of this and looking at other options before we're going to be prepared to be satisfied with it. So with that, I'll open it back up. Any further questions, comments? Steve?
Just a quick one, thanks, Mayor. Mike, you had said that you're still waiting to hear back kind of from the MTO, is that right? Do we have a timeline from them at all, or?
No, we don't have a definitive timeline, but yes, we are waiting to hear back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any further questions, comments? Okay, so we're not considering the proposed bylaw this evening. So I think there will be some more feedback to come back to staff and possibly council as we move this along to the next steps. I think I can speak for council that this is looks like a promising development in this location. However, we do need to resolve some of these issues around traffic to be prepared to move forward forthwith. So if there's nothing further, I think we'll wrap up this application for this evening and recognize that there's more work yet to happen here. Any other questions or comments before we wrap this one up?
Just have one. Like, we'd be willing to participate in any discussions with MTO that based on the feedback that we received tonight, and in particular the concerns around that intersection. So to Curtis and Mike, please keep us informed of any discussions with MTO, and we'll help and assist with those discussions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I'll draw this application to a close for this evening. And we'll move on to our next application. So thank you everyone for your participation in that one. Our next application, again, I'll ask, I guess we can get Councillor Burke back on the line. There she is. Welcome back, Councillor Burke.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to our next application, and I'll ask if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest in regard to this application. This is zoning bylaw 12/21 for Trudy Matusnik and Jamie Cox. Okay, not seeing any. So the application is Trudy Matusnik and Jamie Cox. The land subject to the proposed amendment is described as concession 1, part lot 36, registered plan 61R21331, part 1, and municipally known as 7619 Jones Baseline. The subject land is approximately 0.15 hectares in size. The purpose and effect of this proposed amendment is to remove the holding symbol H on the subject lands to permit the construction of a detached residential dwelling. The holding symbol has been applied to the subject lands to provide council with an opportunity to ensure that sufficient municipal water and sewer capacity is available for the use. Once the holding symbol has been removed, the regulations of the agricultural exception zone, A195, and all other applicable regulations of the Township of Wellington North zoning bylaw 66-01 shall apply to the subject land. How is notice given for this public meeting?
Notices were mailed to the property owners within 120 meters, as well as to the applicable agencies. Signage was posted on the property on April 1st.
Okay, thank you. And I see Matthew has joined us. I assume you're going to give us the presentation on this one, Matthew?
Yes, and I promise I'll be a lot shorter than your previous one. So again, thank you through you, Chair. Before you today is a zone amendment to remove a holding symbol on the subject lands. The applicant is seeking to build a detached residential dwelling on the subject lands. As you mentioned, the H is in place to ensure sufficient municipal services are available. And upon removal of said H, the site-specific agricultural 195 provisions will apply to the lands. And those provisions simply permit reduced frontage as well as a reduced lot area. And with that, staff have confirmed that services are available for the proposed development. And planning staff have no further concerns with the application, and I welcome any questions.
Okay, thank you. Has any further correspondence been received in respect to this application?
There has been no correspondence received.
Okay. Okay. Anyone wishing a notice of the decision of this, the bylaw will be considered at the regular council meeting following this public meeting. Anyone wishing notice of the passing of the bylaw needs to submit a written request. And I'll open the floor for any questions or comments from the public.
Is
anybody with us?
The applicant, Mr. Cox, has been moved into the meeting.
Okay, Jamie, did you want to add anything to this presentation?
No, just that we had met some of the provisions that were set forth for the holding provision removal, just with connecting our existing home to the water and sewer, and then decommissioning our well and septic. So that's all I really have to say.
Okay, thank you. Is anybody else registered to speak to this application, Karen?
No.
Okay, with that, then I'll open the floor to council for any questions or comments. Go ahead, Steve.
I think this just makes sense, and I know Trudy and Jamie have been at this for a couple of years now, and I fully support it. I think it's a great way to use the land there, and makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. So yeah, we did deal with this rezoning previously. It was the holding was placed on it then because of the lack of wastewater treatment capacity. So this is just the final step in lifting that holding provision. So any other questions or comments from council? Okay. So then I think I'll wrap up this application. Then again, we will be dealing with the bylaw with regard to this application after the public meeting is completed. Okay, with that said, I'll move on to the final application this evening. This is zoning bylaw amendment 15/21 for 2073-022 Ontario Inc. That's the owner applicant is that numbered company 207-3022 Ontario Inc. And the land's subject to proposed amendment is described as Part Lot 1, Concession 1, West Luther, 61R10568, Arthur, Township of Wellington North. Subject land is approximately 3.2 hectares in size, and location is in the map attached to your agenda. Purpose and effect of the proposed amendment, again, is to remove the holding symbol H on the portion of the subject lands to permit the construction of dwellings in Phase 3 of the residential subdivision East Ridge Landing. The holding symbol has been applied to the subject lands to provide council with an opportunity to ensure that sufficient municipal water and sewer capacity is available for the use. Once the holding symbol has been removed, the regulations of the medium density residential or R2 zone and all other applicable regulations of the Township of Wellington North zoning bylaw 66-01 shall apply to the subject land. How was notice given for this public meeting?
You're muted, Karen.
Notice was mailed to the property owners within 120 meters, as well as to the applicable agencies. Signage was posted on the property on April 19th.
Thank you, Karen. Curtis, welcome back.
Thank you. Just a few brief comments. As noted, the township's received a request to lift the holding provision for Phase 3 of the East Ridge Landing subdivision in Arthur. Phase 3 includes 19 single detached dwellings, 10 semi-detached, which would be 20 units, and 2 townhouse blocks. The applicants are currently clearing draft conditions and should be in a position to obtain final approval from the county in the near future. As mentioned, the holding has been applied to restrict development until servicing has been confirmed for the property. So we now know that servicing allocation has been confirmed for this phase of development, and the applicant has entered into a pre-servicing, model home, sewage allocation, and subdivision agreements. Planning staff recommend that it's appropriate to lift the holding provision on the property at this time, and we've prepared an amending bylaw for council's consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Curtis. Anyone requesting notice of this decision needs to submit it in writing. The bylaw with regard to this application will be considered at the regular council meeting immediately following this public meeting. And with that, I'll open the floor for any questions or comments from the public. Karen, do we have anyone registered who wishes to speak to this application?
No, Mr. Coffey said today he wasn't, he didn't need to speak, so I have no one.
Okay. With that, then I'll open the floor for any questions or comments from council.
I have none.
Okay. Go ahead, Dan.
Just, I mean, it's nice to see this development continuing on. It's been a long time coming, and it's nice to see that this is going to move forward, and it's all due to you know, the wastewater upgrades. So yeah, very good to see.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, so again, we will be dealing with the bylaw to lift that holding provision immediately following. So with that, I will adjourn the public meeting. Moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve, that the public meeting of April 26, 2021 be adjourned at 8:14 p.m. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So that completes our public meeting. And we'll come back to our regular council meeting. So I have a recommendation here, moved by Dan, seconded by Lisa, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North resume the April 26, 2021 regular meeting of council at 8:14 p.m. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And again, we'll deal with those bylaws from the public meeting. So first recommendation here, moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry, that bylaw number 47-21 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 66-01 being the zoning bylaw for the Township of Wellington North be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. This in regard to concession 1, part lot 36, registered plan 61R 21331 part 1 and municipally known as 7619 Jones Baseline. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And our second bylaw, the recommendation moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve, that bylaw number 48-21 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 66-01 being a zoning bylaw for the Township of Wellington North be read a first, second, and third time and enacted. As in regard to part lot 1, concession 1, West Luther, registered plan 61R 10568, Arthur, Township of Wellington North, East Ridge Landing, phase 3. Any discussion on that? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to our deputations this evening. We have 3 of them. And first on our list is Arthur Green Developments, regard to sewage allocation and approval of site plan. So I see Paulo has joined us. Welcome, Paulo, and I'll turn the floor over to you, and you can share your information with council.
Hello, everybody. How are you this evening?
Paulo, just before you start, excuse me, is there anyone else attending that I should move in to join you, or do you have everyone with you?
Everybody is together here in our office.
Okay, thank you.
Zuhaib Ali is also beside me. Hello. So yes, I guess the purpose of the meeting this evening was to confirm the sewage allocation for the building proposal that we are undertaking, the revamping of the Queen's Hotel. So I'm not sure where to start in terms of what the interpretation is with the sewage allocation for the site. We've been in conversation with the Public Works Department, and we understand that there's quite a bit of upgrading that's going to be happening on George Street this summer, fall. So it's, I guess, natural for the collaboration to happen now in terms of the timing for the installation of new water services and new sewer services to the site, with the contemplation of potential future development. Also, we are looking to do the installation of a fire hydrant at the rear of the property, which will allow for the laterals, which will potentially provide additional capacity later on for additional development. And of course, will provide fire protection to the parking lot, which is shared between the municipality and the private land, which is owned by Arthur Green Developments. So the Queen's Hotel, as it stood before, due to the fact that it was a tavern and hotel, had quite a bit of sewer use, certainly in its regular daily operation. Obviously, it's not been operating daily for a little bit of time anyways. So I guess what our interpretation and what the interpretation of our engineer is essentially that the should not be treated as a new development, a new greenfield development. It should be given its existing allocation, which was calculated, I think back in 2015, I think it was calculated. Sorry, 17. Sorry, 17. Which was the previous incarnation of the Queen's Hotel, including all of the bathroom facilities for the tavern. Obviously, there was multitude of toilets and sinks, plus all of the bar provisions, beer coolers, etc. All of which, of course, had a capacity element to them. There was also hotel residential uses on the second floor. So again, there was a multitude of bathrooms and kitchen facilities, et cetera. So through our calculation and analysis, basically the new development, we're proposing to request an additional, I believe, 27 fixture units. Z, can we just pull up the okay. Put it on the screen. Can everybody see it? We'll start at the top. Can everybody see that on the screen?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, we've all of the items which were in use in that facility, in that property before, were captured here prior to the initiation of the major renovation. And if we just scroll down, you know, it's done mathematically in terms of how the calculations are. It's done according to Ontario Building Code. And if we scroll down through the items, obviously, you know, the tavern use is no longer something that is being contemplated. And that heavy water use element is being redeployed to, I guess, on a sort of a per square foot basis, a lighter use, which would be in the form of the hotel, which we're proposing on the main floor, and of the residential units on the second and third floors. So at the end of the day, according to the calculations, we're basically only asking for about, I think, 27 fixture units, which if you look at the totals, so the proposed total of the Queen's Hotel is 157.5 fixture units. The previous total, if you just scroll down a little bit, see? No, sorry. And the previous total of the building in its tavern hotel use was 130 fixture units. So we're not really proposing to add substantially to it, you know, at least for this phase of the original portion of the building component, which is what we're contemplating now. The other very, very important thing is that, as is typical with these historical buildings on main streets in most of Ontario and North America, for that matter, these were built and they were plumbed at a time when there didn't necessarily exist stormwater management facilities. So the roof water leaders and all the roof drains were actually being contributed to the sanitary. So obviously through this development and reorganizing of the building, that's been removed. So that has actually even a much larger impact. So if we can just scroll down to the stormwater management portion. I think it's, yes. So these are roof leader calculations based on a 15-minute rainwater event. This is done as per the Ontario Building Code. The rainwater calculation point was taken in Mount Forest. There's not a station available in Arthur, but you can see here that the fixture units are quite large when it comes to the potential impact on the sewage treatment plant when roof leaders are directly connected to the sanitary sewer. So, you know, there's 897 fixture units, which would be essentially driven downstream to the sewage treatment plant, which, even though the rainwater, would still have to be dealt with through capacity. Of course, all of that is being removed. We've also done this before in other buildings of this nature. So the total impact or burden on the sewage treatment capacity is quite limited, and you know, that was the reason for the presentation this evening. Maybe we'll just show the front of the building here. We're also moving along through finish. So actually, these are shot to the front of the. Look at the historical one there, and maybe we'll just go to the rendering that we've done. Yeah, so this is the sort of the new incarnation, reasonably to scale and as a finished product in terms of the intended final use of the facade presentation. And we've gone back to the, you know, to the look that was probably pre-1947. You want to show the homecoming picture there? Sorry, some of these pictures are a little grainy. We did our best to salvage them from the hotel when it was being demolished. Some of them had already been exposed to a bit of water, but you can sort of get a sense of it. And maybe the really historical one. Yeah, so we're trying to re-represent the existing, historical facade of the building, and bring this project to finality in conjunction with the completion of George Street. And we think it's going to be, let us pull up the new version here. We think it's going to be a very pleasant addition to that area of George Street. And we're going to work closely with the Public Works and the VIA, and trying to make a comprehensive package which gives a very nice high quality curb appeal to that portion of George Street. So I don't know if there's any other questions or comments. For us, we're glad to answer and glad to work through the details. I mean, that's in terms of the sewage allocation component. The position is that we're doing it by the math in terms of the OBC calculations, so the Ontario Building Code calculations, and asking for a very small, additional capacity if you look at it straight up and down from the sewage side of things. And when you take into factor the real practical impact of rainwater leader contributions to the sewer system, in fact, there's going to be a decrease in total volumes on the sewage treatment plants.
Okay.
Glad to answer any questions that anybody has.
Okay, so thanks for the presentation, Paulo. Just clarification I'd like to have for other members of council would be, what really is your ask this evening?
I think because we put our sewage allocation request in, and the subsequent request from the township was to come on this meeting to be clear, to ask for the sewage allocations for the development for the project that we have before us, so that it can proceed to completion.
So just to be clear, then, so you're requesting, currently you don't meet the requirements of our sewage allocation policy to be granted sewage allocation units this year, but you would like consideration to get that before next April. Is that correct?
I didn't understand that we didn't meet the requirements. I thought that we were just seeking a clarification to the method of calculation, perhaps, because I'm not sure that sewage allocation calculations like these contemplate these type of very unique situations in regards to existing uses and the density of the uses, these sorts of things. So they're a very unique situation, which quite frankly, I doubt that anybody who was drafting these documents in preparation would have really contemplated. But they are real, these are real items. The roof is there, the roof leaders are there. These are plumbing fixtures that existed in the building. So I think it's a unique situation that requires, I'm assuming, some additional feedback from yourselves.
Okay. So yeah, Matt.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lennox. Yeah, the reason there's a clause within the policy that just says requests for sewage allocation units will only be considered by council once the development has achieved draft plan approval or site plan agreement or subdivision agreement or development agreement or similar approvals. And this evening, that's why the deputations have been asked to present. The 3 deputations that are going forward don't meet that clause of the sewage allocation policy. And another point, but to council, obviously this is a policy of council, and council can give consideration to these applications. The other point of clarification is when Paulo presented, he talked about 27 fixture units, and fixture units, I understand, is a term that's used in the building code. We've consulted with Triton, and there's a report later on in the agenda, and we have figured it out to be, the request would be for 12 equivalent residential units. So what Triton has done is Triton has taken a look at the building that's proposed by Paulo and his development team and determined that probably an appropriate allocation would be for 12 equivalent residential units. So I think Paulo's ask probably is for those 12 equivalent residential units tonight.
Okay, thank you for that. With that, I'll throw open to other members of council if you have any questions for clarification from Paulo at this point. Steve, go ahead.
Thanks, Paulo, and it's good to see something being done at the Queens. It'll be nice to have that addition back on Main Street. And thanks, Matt. My question was going to be actually what kind of an allocation number are you looking for? So the number of 12, Matt, is what you're looking for, or what Paulo's looking for. So thank you for that. That's all I was wondering, how many allocations they needed.
Okay, so we have this deputation this evening and a couple others to consider, because we are considering sewage allocations generally in accordance with policy, but these just don't quite fall into the policy parameters this evening. So any other questions or comments before we move on to the next one? Councillor Burke, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Lennox. So Pablo, should council decide to grant the sewage allocation that you need, would we continue to see the progress moving forward as we have as of late?
Yes.
On the Queens building?
Yes. Yes, and through quite a bit of difficulty through these times that we're dealing with. But yes, we are fully committed to following through for reasons that are obviously bringing it to completion and fruition, and also because there's a necessity on our part to bring things to completion as well from a practical standpoint, financially, etc. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any others, so all of this your request will be given consideration later on in the meeting. So thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll move on to our next present deputation, I guess I should properly call it. So thanks very much.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
Our next one is Archcon Group, Inc. And who do we have from Archcon, Karen?
We have Martin McDonald, and he's on camera there and off mute.
Okay, well, welcome, Marty.
Good evening. How are y'all doing?
I'll turn the floor over to you and let you have at it.
So I don't know if you've got Ken Matthews or Glenn Rind around there as well, but they're also with Archcon Group. I don't know.
Okay, I see Ken Matthews. I'm sorry, who was the other one?
Glenn Reinders, if he's there. If he's not, that's okay too.
I don't see him. I've moved Ken in.
No problem. Okay, well, maybe I'll start. Ken will join us here in a second. Anyways, I want to thank the councilors and Mayor Lennox for allowing us this opportunity to present our project to you. We did just recently a pre-consultation on this project, so we've received some feedback, and that's what's brought us here this evening. One of the items on that list was the sewage allocation. And as we had mentioned, or you had mentioned in the previous application there, we did not currently have a site plan agreement or anything formal. We're working through the documentation as far as we do have our list, and we're basically only had a couple items that, like I say, we had somewhat of an issue with. One of them was the sewage allocation. And obviously we're a little premature to actually get to the point of actually applying for that as a result. I will mention that on the sewage allocation document, we did go through the application to fill it out and to find out if it would be looked on favorably. And I believe that everything else on that list was fairly favorable for this project. So if you would maybe just allow me just to kind of run down, I'll just kind of explain what this project looks like and then open it up a little further.
Karen, do you actually have that slideshow or that presentation?
You're muted, Karen.
Would you like me to just, okay.
If you have it, you can share your screen.
Yeah, I think that's what I'll do.
And I do have it as well. So if you want to share your screen though.
All right, can everybody see that?
No.
Yep.
Okay, so this was the project. It's located at 773 Princess Street. This is the old Superior Tire building. As many of you know, it's halfway between the hospital and the community complex on Princess Street. We recently purchased that property, and between Ken Matthews, who's here, and myself, we're partners in a company called Archcon Group and Hockey Church Management as well. We do, I will say, the Hockey Church Management comes from the fact that we've built lots of churches. In fact, we've built over 500 churches across Ontario. Ken Matthews has recently built a shop warehouse building in the Mount Forest area. He lives in Holstein, so knows the area well. The property that we're talking about is about 1.5 acres, or just a little over 1.5 acres. It was previously went under a few different versions of this, from apartment ideas to townhouses, but we've settled on one that we believe best suits the area. So what we're actually presenting is a 32 rental unit apartments geared to a 55 plus community. We have on-site parking for 48 spots, which is a parking spot and a half for each unit, which is what we're required. We also have handicap parking on site. We've got stuff like amenity space, common room, fully accessible apartment, elevator in moving areas, that type of thing, on-site storage for some of the units to rent and that type of thing as well. I'll take it through maybe just a little bit with the floor plan here. What you're seeing on the screen there, this is Princess Street. So you'd actually enter the property off of Princess Street. All the units on this lower level, there's about 15 units on the lower level with a small kind of common or party room here with some exterior space, some storage units down here. All around the property itself are residential right now. There would be, when we did the pre-consultation, some respect to this back lot line there. We'd probably have to make sure there was enough buffer and that type of thing. Hopefully some foliage of trees, that type of thing on that. So really what we've come here for is not so much to actually ask for the sewage allocation, but to be granted that we will do our homework and we will put in for a site plan agreement, and we will work through the documentation. And what I'm hoping is that alongside that we would be granted this. The reality is we're hoping to fast track this project. Is one that, once again, it's not in our realm of anything that's outside of our realm of expertise. We've built buildings twice or more the size of this particular building. So it's not something we're actually coming to try and waste people's time. We understand you have allocations that you're wanting to give out and you're not wanting to do that ahead of time. But once again, we believe that we can actually push this through fairly quick with your cooperation, provided that we provide the documentation required and everyone agrees with it. Second floor on the building, once again, there's another 17 units, which brought us in total to 32 units. A little bit of a few renderings here just to kind of show you what this would look like as you're coming in off of Princess Street. This would be the front of the building. Once again, some little storage units and that type of thing down there. All the parking on site, completely contained on site. So that's looking towards Princess Street. Once again, just the entrance. And this showing the back, once again, residential all along the two sides there, which shows the need for a bit of buffering along that back side. All right. So as far as what we have, once again, I mentioned that this was the previous Superior Tire building that was there. It's been since knocked down. We have a phase 1 and a phase 2 ESA report, our environmental report, that's been filed already. So we do have a record of site condition filed with ESA. And as far as we're concerned, we are actually going ahead with plans. We've got geotech survey, our architectural, civil, and everyone on board for those plans. And once again, just kind of waiting for the sewage allocation to make sure that we're heading in the right direction here, that we can do it in the time frame that we're looking for. All right, and with that, Ken, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I just want to thank Mayor and Councilor's time. We certainly appreciate you fitting us in and the opportunity to present this project. I personally believe that this fits the area extremely well. I am pleased to get some rental units that are close to the hospital and long-term care. I can talk from personal experience that it would be nice if you had a spouse in long-term care, if there was someplace local that and close by that you could walk to see them every day. That was certainly the case with my mother-in-law and father-in-law. So sensitive to that, with the intent that I would actually keep some units available for specifically that purpose. Although I know there's a big demand in the town for density housing, and especially for the factories. Although I did look at that possibility, I didn't feel this was the location for that. I felt that this was a developed area with many 55 plus people in this area, and I would like to not rock the boat in that area. So I think our intent is to keep to that structure. So I think you have to be intentional in order to have any successful project. And our methodology on this, if we wanted to communicate to you, we're hoping you agree with our methodology, but we don't actually know that. Thank you for your time.
Thanks very much, gentlemen. I'll open the floor up to any questions from members of council. Dan, go ahead.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you, Ken, for the presentation. It really, you know, I know that you're eager to get going and move ahead with this project, but it really does concern me that we haven't even got into a public process yet. Government, I mean, Marty, you use the word pushing through, and government is always accused of pushing stuff through without letting people know what's going on. And that's my biggest concern with this, is that it needs to go through the public process first. I'm not opposed to it, don't get me wrong, but I'm just, if we don't go through the public process, we open the door and we open a can of worms that every development want to do the same thing. They're going to want to get, they're wanting to jump the gun, up the queue, get in line. The public has an opportunity to know what we're talking about or what the development is all about. And that's just my biggest concern. I'm not opposed to, like I said, I'm not opposed to the development. I think it looks good. It fits the right spot, but we're putting the cart before the horse here. And that's got me, questioning whether giving these sewage allotments out right now is the right thing to do.
Can I make a suggestion? We're actually not trying to sidestep the public meeting at all. It's just my understanding that even going through that after that we get a site plan agreement that's agreed upon, then we would not be able to come back to you guys till next April. And the hope on this, for me on this meeting, that if we were successful at convincing the public and you guys that we could get an allocation for those units. that's at that time. So I think that's really why we're here. We're not actually trying to go ahead. And by the way, I've been in the community a long time. I hear you, Dan, and I would actually agree with everything you just said.
And Dan, if you'll excuse my language on that one, the truth is I wasn't trying to push ahead of that. I do understand that we are going to have to actually go through the process. And I do believe that we will provide the necessary documentation and we will give a chance for the public to have a say on this project. So there was no intention there from my side. My side was more to state the fact that what Ken is saying, that if we get it through and then we have to wait till next April, I'm just not sure if there was a way of actually providing some way to say, hey, we've already got the approvals through site plan, through building permit. If that was the case, then can we actually get the sewage allocation, or is that a showstopper until next April?
Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you, Marty, and thank you, Ken, for those rebuttal comments. I understand exactly what you're saying, but there's people that are going to be seeing this meeting tonight, and they're going to be seeing that there's going to be a development in their backyard, and they haven't had the opportunity to even comment on it yet. And that's, you know, we haven't done this before. And I think if we do it now, are we going to open the door to having other developers request the same thing? That's my concern. It's just we need to do the public process. Like I said, I'm not opposed to it. I certainly can support it, but I think we just got to follow the right process. That's all. This development happens to be in my ward. I'm going to take the majority of the calls on this if people are all upset tomorrow morning because they don't know about it. They've just found out about this tonight. So I don't know. Maybe we can work something out. I don't know. But as it stands right now, I think we need to deal with that public issue first.
Any other questions or comments?
I'm good, thank you.
So I guess my comment would be that, I mean, we put those provisions in our sewage allocation policy for some of the reasons that Dan has outlined, but also we wanted to be sure that anybody applying for sewage allocation was in a position to use it, because we didn't want somebody hanging on to it for years and years and not taking advantage of them. We want those, we're limiting the amount of sewage allocation to be given out. We want to make sure it's going to be used. So I guess we saw the things like site plan approval and zoning and those types of things as hurdles that if somebody is past those hurdles, then they're likely going to proceed fairly quickly. So can you gentlemen comment on really what your timeline or what you're hoping your timeline would be?
You want me to take it, Marty?
Yeah, go ahead.
So we, as Marty mentioned before, we build churches primarily. We, because of COVID, have had our churches dry or minimized. I would normally build 10 projects at a time. I'm currently building 4 projects. I have a window open this fall that I'm hoping to fill. So we would be hoping to do that in that time frame. And if not in Mount Forest, probably somewhere there. So, if this project doesn't go because we can't get allocation till next April, it doesn't make it any less of a good project for this lot, in my opinion.
So I just to kind of capture hopefully what you're asking for, that we would still complete these hurdles that we're talking about, like site plan, zoning amendments, whatever's required, but that we would agree to consider your application beyond just the April timeframe is really what you're asking.
That's what I'm asking. That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of council for these gentlemen? So we have other, just a second, Sherry. we have other applications or other requests as well. So we will be talking about sewage allocation later on in the meeting, just for your information, and we'll deal with, my expectation is we'll deal with these requests at the same time as that. So go ahead, Sherry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I would far rather reconsider this project once they're a little further along in the process. As Councillor Lake alluded to, you know, the public process, and move it along that way, as opposed to saying yes to the allocations that they need this evening.
Can I just ask, is there an opportunity for that to happen prior to next April, or is that only allocated one time per year?
So just, so I'm not sure whether you're aware or not, this sewage allocation policy is a fairly new policy for us. This is the first iteration of the policy with a consideration time of April only. So it at this point, it's this April, then next April, unless council decides to waive that requirement right now. And that will be part of the discussion, I would anticipate, as we get into the sewage allocation discussion later in the meeting. So I think what I'm hearing is we're not looking to say no at this point, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, but that we do think that those steps that were outlined in the policy are important, and it's just a question of then of how do we meet the needs that you guys are looking for while continuing to maintain the intent of our policy. So we'll have that discussion as the meeting progresses. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thanks, gentlemen. We do have one more person who wants to speak to us, so stay tuned. There's more discussion to come.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Do you have somebody from Cache to join us, Karen?
Yes, I do. Marcus, Marcus, you're on mute. Is there anyone else, Marcus, attending that I should move in? Give anyone else to support you in this? No, okay.
Just myself, yeah.
Okay.
Hey, welcome, Marcus. Thanks for your patience this evening. I'll turn the floor over to you, and you can share your information with us.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to the councilors as well. Appreciate the time this evening. And, you know, the reason I'm here this evening is obviously kind of twofold. One of them is to talk about our allocation request, but the other one is actually to give you a brief presentation of where we're at in the process with respect to our respective plan. Actually, am I able to share my screen, Karen, or?
I've got it ready, but yes, you can share your screen if you'd rather do it that way.
Sure. Let me just make sure I don't mess this up. Okay, how's that? Can everybody see my screen?
We can.
Okay, great. So you'll recall in, I believe it was November of last year, just before the new year, we were in front of yourselves and the public for a public meeting on our application at 321 Donville Street. And the plan that we presented is the one that's on the screen right now, consisted of about 240 units, was made up of 36-foot units, 40-foot, 45-foot, as well as townhouses. And then that massive stormwater management block that you see on the plan, which was required to manage some of the external drainage that drains to this site. And from that meeting, really we heard three kind of critical comments. One of them being the elimination of some of the smaller lots, being the 36-foot lots. The other one, you know, trying to introduce some park space. We were really kind of hindered by the size of the swim pond that we basically had the size to capture some of the external drainage. And, you know, we took some of those comments back, and, you know, we've been working with staff as well as the external agencies. Sorry, the third comment was from the GRCA actually, with respect to that piped block, which is the green guy here on the right part of the plan, which is ultimately a piping of the existing storm channel that the town put in back in the 70s, I believe. They wanted to confirm that there was no fish spawning and fish habitats in that river or channel. We've since done that. We've updated our environmental reports, and they're back with the GRCA now. We've also made our submissions to the ministry, the fisheries, and we're expecting a sign off from them very shortly. Good thing for us is that there is no fish and no fish habitat in that channel. So it does function just as a stormwater channel, as the town had always proposed it, and as it functions today and always has been. So we're pretty confident in that channel as well. So what we did was took the other first two comments that I mentioned, which was trying to introduce some park space and eliminate some of the smaller lots, just to come up with I'll call it a better plan, and a plan that maybe was more appropriate for the area, and responded to some of council's as well as the public's comments from the first public meeting. And what we've resubmitted recently, actually about 2 or 3 weeks ago to staff, and it's been circulated to the agencies as well as internal staff, is the plan that's in front of you now. So we've eliminated all of the 36-foot lots. All of the lots are now 40 feet, with the exception of the townhouses. We still have the massive stormwater management block, but again, that's kind of a fixed size to deal with external drainage. We've also introduced a park. So we've carved out we've eliminated the townhouse units that were originally on this part of the plan, and we've introduced a park that's almost an acre in size. The good thing, or I'll say the nice thing about this park in this area is, in addition to the plan itself, this plan will also be contributing the upgrade of Preston Street as well, the modernization of Preston Street. So Matt can speak to the details a little more, Matt Aston. But I'm assuming, I think that Preston Street will be upgraded. It'll have sidewalks. It'll be a more pedestrian-friendly street in the coming years. So, this will give a nice frontage to Preston Street. You'll have a park space that's accessible to the greater community, as well as the new community that we're creating. And like I said, we've been working through the process with staff. We feel pretty confidently in this plan. And in addition to the lot sizes, the 40-foot lots are going to allow us to introduce a variety of product. For people that are looking to downsize, we're also going to have some bungalows or bungalofts. The townhouses will provide for some product that maybe the younger generations can afford to get into and get into the market. So that's really where I wanted to take you this evening, is just some of the changes we've made to the plans, some of the improvements we've made to the plan that we feel pretty confidently about. As it relates to allocation, I know it's the sensitive policy in the allocation document is what you were just discussing on the last presentation, which is the need for a site plan agreement or draft approval, and a subdivision agreement for that matter. And I would say in our case, we've worked through the public process. The public have seen this plan. We've since taken their comments and I think made the plan better. The other thing is that it checks a lot of the other boxes. It's within the official plan area for growth. It meets the official plan policies for density. And again, it's also going to be contributing to the upgrades along Preston Street as well, both in sharing in some of the design costs with Triton, as well as likely some of the construction costs as well from a capital perspective. So it does pose its benefits, but I do realize that there is that one policy in the allocation that is there. The reality is for us that, or the intent of that policy, I think, at least from your part and staff, was put in place so that people don't sit on allocation. It's not given and then not used. And I would say for us, at least in our experience, that wouldn't be the case. Anytime we get a draft approval or any type of approval for that matter, it's really all hands on deck. We'd be looking to move pretty quickly with this community, allocate our resources, our manpower, and really go full steam ahead. So there would be no issue with us sitting on any of the capacity if you guys chose to see it allocated this evening. The other thing I would say is that, you know, from our perspective, to have to wait till April or next April for that matter would just be a really long time, given where we're at in the process. Like I said, we're probably about 3 or 4 weeks away from being back in front of you with a draft approval. And staff can probably speak more to that matter, but I would say we've come a long way since November, and we're kind of at the finish line as it relates to planning. So I'll leave it at that, and if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to respond to them.
Great. Thank you, Marcus. Maybe if you could stop your screen sharing, I can see the other members of council. Thank you.
Oh yeah, and you know what? It was a funny comment. I just want to add one thing. Historically, this site was actually draft approved back in 1993. I'm not sure if any of you remember, but it was actually brought up in staff's report, and I'll just, I'm not sure if you can still see my screen.
No, I can't.
No, I got disabled. Anyway,
Go ahead. I just enabled it again.
No problem. Thank you. I'll just pull up this plan for you just to give you some history on the site, obviously. This is a plan from 1993, originally draft approved. I believe it had about 130 units originally. So our ask is going from 130 to 207 with built in about 25 years. So that's where we're coming from.
Okay. Thanks, Marcus. Any questions from members of council for Marcus? Steve?
Thanks, Marcus, for that, and thanks for the little the history lesson as well. So thanks for that. Yeah, you guys have done quite a bit of work. Is this? I know you said you guys could allocate all your resources and get this rolling. Is it going to be a phased-in approach, or how do you see this development unfolding?
Thanks. Thank you, Councilor McCabe. So, you know, originally we were looking at this in two ways. From a capacity standpoint on our end, you know, we've done projects of this magnitude or larger, all in one phase. So we could definitely handle this all as one phase. You know, I think the phasing is really all going to be dependent on council, to be honest. If we're able to obtain the allocation that would satisfy the entire plan, we would move forward with the entire plan in its entirety in one phase. That way, you know, obviously Preston Street's going to get upgraded all as one, and that would have the entire frontage of our development. So I would see it all as one phase, as long as council sees it all as one phase as well.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you.
Dan, go ahead.
Thanks, Marcus, for the update. If you weren't granted enough capacity to do it in one phase, I mean, you understand the constraints we're under, obviously, but if you only got enough to do a phase, would you move ahead with that? Like, depending, I guess, maybe on the number, I don't know. Would it take a certain number for you to move ahead, or would it be something that you might just put a hold on?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I want to make sure I answer it the right way. You know, ultimately, there's certain aspects of infrastructure that have to get put in. You know, obviously, I don't have the plan up anymore, but there's that massive swim pond that has to go in no matter what. So whether we build 15 units or 20 units or 100 units, that pond has to go in. There's also the upgrade of Preston Street, which is going to happen, and we're going to contribute to, as well as some of the other infrastructure that's obviously required to service the site. So it gets to a sticky point where you're going to be putting this infrastructure in the ground with, you know, not enough homes to support it from a capital and financial standpoint. So it's a good question. I don't have the specific numbers of where that balancing act would be.
Yeah, no, I understand.
But I hear you loud and clear, and it's a great question. I wish I had a more detailed answer, but what I can say is there's a lot of infrastructure that has to go in before we can put any houses in the ground. So, yeah.
Just one more question.
Yeah, go
then,
ahead.
Andy.
Go ahead.
So Marcus, if you got allotment, just say it was a specific number, would you look at that as a commitment from council to say, you know, they're committed to moving forward, and on the other hand, we hope they're committed to moving forward with phase 2 of the sewage treatment plant, so that your development can continue to move forward. Would you look at that as a commitment on our part?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to, I just want to make sure I understand the question. Would it be, you're looking to us as or we would be receiving the commitment and, you know, looking to us to contribute to some of the phase 2 upgrades, or like, I'm just trying to understand specifically the question.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if you're given, let's say 40 allotments, and you start to move ahead with that, does that, in your mind, is that a commitment from the municipality that we're going to move forward over the next few years, and that you're going to move forward over the next few years? With 40 this year, or whatever the case may be, maybe it's 50 next year, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, no, I understand the question now. I guess it kind of goes back to our first question that, you know, 40 units now, as opposed to, let's say, 200 now. Again, the allotment that we receive is really going to dictate how many units we can legally sell between now and, let's call it, next April. You know, obviously, we don't want to sell units that aren't allocated, because there's a huge legal risk to that as well.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
But the reality is, once we start selling units, so if it is 40, for example, under Tarion, we've got to start setting some closing dates and occupancy dates. And without having the other allotments and not knowing when phase 2 may or may not come online, it's tough for us to start planning out the subdivision, you know, appropriately and allocating the capital and the infrastructure. So
yeah,
I'll give you this in a kind of a flip scenario. If council was to allocate us the full allotment for our subdivision, I would take that as a commitment from council, as well as a commitment from us, that we would be all hands on deck to get this community in the ground as soon as possible, as well as fully built out over the next couple of years, and not sit on any of it.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Other questions for Marcus? Okay, I'm not seeing any at the moment. So again, you've probably heard some of the other presentations, Marcus. We will be considering your request when we get to the sewage allocation part of our agenda later on. So
appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And if there's nothing further, we'll close off that part of our agenda. And we'll move on to the other parts of our agenda. So Karen,
Yes.
I kind of said that we would consider these when we're considering other sewage allocation. Is that the appropriate? Is that okay to push these requests off until then?
Yeah, I think it's in the report, isn't it, Matt?
Through you, Mayor Lennox, there are details as it relates to those applications in the report. The resolutions that would follow, or that fall out of the deputations, are that separate, where there was a separate Word document sent around.
Yeah, I have that in front of me. So we'll deal with that when we get to that report then.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, so let's move on to adoption of the minutes of the council and public meeting. Recommendation here moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve, that the minutes of the regular meeting of council and the public meeting held on April 12th, 2021 be adopted as circulated. Any questions on those minutes? Comments? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And we'll move on now to, we don't have any business arising from previous meetings, so let's move on to items for consideration. So let's get the ones out that we want to further discuss. I'm pretty sure we're going to be talking about 6A.
Really?
Any others people would like to pull out for discussion? Steve, go ahead.
I'd like 3D.
3B is in Bob.
Sorry, D.
D is in David, okay.
5A.
5A, okay.
You've alluded to the 6A. And I would love to have a chat about 7A as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any others anyone else would like to pull out? Sherry, go ahead.
6B. Is that right? Nope, sorry, that's wrong. 3B, sorry.
3B,
3B as in Bob.
Community Improvement Program.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any others? Dan, did you have any you wanted to pull out?
No, I was 6A for sure. That was enough for me.
The biggie.
Okay, so I'll just do a recap. We have 3B, the Community Improvement Program, 3D, the Wellington North Shop Local Sidewalk Saturday, 5A, the Master Fire Plan, 6A, the Sewage Allocation, and 7A, the Report on Licensed Kennels. Okay. Last chance for any others. Okay, so I'm going to suggest that we'll approve all the others. So moved by Dan, seconded by Lisa, that all items listed under items for consideration on the April 26, 2021 council agenda, with the exception of those items identified for separate discussion, be approved and the recommendations therein be adopted. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So we'll go back to, where are we here? 3, wait a minute. 3B, sorry. Okay. So 3B, I'll read the recommendation. Moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry. That the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report EDO 2021-13, and further that Council approves the following facade improvement grants. $2,500 to Fraycom at 130 and 142 Main Street North in Mount Forest. $2,500 to Paul Van Grootheest, owner of 244 George Street in Arthur. And $700 to Ice Cream Cone Company at 207 George Street in Arthur. And further, the council approves grants totaling $6,500 to Peter Irvin, owner of 9121 Highway 6, which was the past home to the Kenilworth Country Kitchen. And with that said, I will open the floor for questions or comments. Sherry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I always like to take the opportunity to highlight this report with the Community Improvement Program. Just because businesses take great pride in their buildings, and their investment to their buildings makes our main streets more inviting. I do have a question for Dale, though, through you, Mayor Lennox. And it was noted in the report, Dale. My question is there's no limitation to the number of requests that an application can make as long as they fit into the criteria?
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lennox, that's correct, Councillor Burke. So as long as they're a different project, then they can submit another application at a future time.
Okay.
So I believe one of these has received funding a few years ago through the Community Improvement Program, but it was for a different application.
Okay, thank you. I just think that that's also noteworthy to some of our businesses that may be looking at doing some improvements at a later date, so that those folks know that they may be eligible again as well. So thank you very much, Dale.
Good point.
Okay, thank you. Other questions or comments? Steve, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just going to say thanks, Andy. I think when we can help local business, especially during this last pandemic period, they need all the help that we can get, and I'm happy that we have this grant system that we set up to help our community, and it'll be nice to have a store open in Ward 4 in Kenilworth again. So looking forward to it. Long time coming. So thank you to them as well. I think if we they commit to our township, we should commit to them as well. So it's a good partnership.
Agreed.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll call the motion then. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 3D, the other economic development report. And I'll read the recommendation. Moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report EDO 2021-15, being an update on the Wellington North Shop Local Sidewalk Saturday Shopping Program. And further, that Council supports promoting downtown shopping and ensuring physical distancing in a safe and comfortable environment by authorizing the closure of George Street in Arthur and Main Street in Mount Forest on the following Saturdays. Main Street, Mount Forest, July 10th and August 14th. George Street in Arthur, June 26th and September 11th, pending the connecting link schedule. And with that, I will open the floor for questions or comments. Steve, go ahead.
Thanks, Andy, and through you. I love this idea. It's been great. It's been greatly received. Can't wait to do the sidewalk or the Saturdays again. Just again, kind of piggybacking on what I just said about the helping the community businesses out. I think this is a great way for them to open their doors and drive business in a safe and responsible way as well. I was just wondering with the Mount Forest one, with the Queen Street rehabilitation, will that have any effect on those dates at all?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay, good.
Matt, I don't know.
Matt's shaking his head, so.
Yeah, will not.
Okay, excellent. Great, and looking forward to it.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lennox, let's hope we can pull it off with whatever the public health protocols are at that point in time. Certainly, we're hopeful by then that we'll be able to open and do it in a safe way. There's a lot of planning around it. The chambers and the BIAs are all behind it. In Arthur, they totally understand that until we really know what the connecting link schedule is, we may need to change around the plans there, but they're hopeful for a pre-connecting link celebration on the 26th and a post-connecting link celebration middle of September.
Thanks, Dale. Lisa?
Yeah, I just kind of wanted to elaborate a little about that. I mean, I do sit on both the chambers as the township representative and the Arthur BIA. And I mean, something that I really noticed at the meeting, I guess it was last week anyway, since our last council meeting. Up until now, there's been a lot more positivity, but while they're trying to remain positive, they were very deflated. And one of the meetings went so far as to discuss how they were feeling and depression and things like that. This is something they're looking forward to. This is something they need, and fully behind it. I am so looking forward to this.
Okay. And yeah, I got to get my plug in again for vaccination. if vaccines are available, encourage everyone you know to go get vaccinated, because when we get more people vaccinated in our community, we can get back to a more normal socialization program. So please, anyone you're talking to, get vaccinated for yourself and your family, but also get vaccinated so that our community can try to get back to normal. So, and these type of events are hopefully the lightning rod for helping us get together socially again. So looking forward to that. Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
We'll move on to 5A. This is the master fire plan. Moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive report DFC 2021-003 master fire plan, and further the Council approve the master fire planning process as submitted by the fire service management team. With that, I'll open the floor for any questions or comments. Steve, go ahead.
Thanks. I just wanted to bring this up just because this report is fantastic. It's very well detailed. It lays out all the completed projects, what all you guys have been up to, and you've been up to a lot in a short amount of time as well. So I wanted to thank you, Chris and Khalees, for putting and Marco for putting this all together as well, and representing us in the public's eye as well. The social media, I know it's going very well in some of the contests you've had there, and keep up the good work. And yeah, great job. Thank you very much for this report.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Lisa?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, and this is kind of around this report and things that are going on. I just wanted to let you know that Khalees did come and make a presentation to the Arthur Chamber, and from my recollection and their recollection, this is the first time consultation and discussion has happened with some of the businesses in the business community. They were quite impressed with Khalees and her presentation, so thank you and good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Ken, looking forward to seeing the finished document and how this is going to line up for our community in the future. So that being said, I'll call those all in favor. That's carried. Thank you. So let's move on to 6A. So this is Ops Report 2021-13, on the report on 2021 sewage allocation. So we'll start with the recommendation here.
Sorry, Your Worship. I'm just.
We got to split this one.
Yeah, I have the recommendation up. Let me just share my screen. I've drafted it.
Okay.
Oh gosh, I hope that's the right one. Okay, can you see that?
Now we can. So, okay, so this.
So the resolution needs to be broke to two parts. The second one, Dan will declare a pecuniary interest and not vote.
Okay.
And if you notice on the very first bullet point in your report, it says 39 units. It should be 33. And I'll let Matt speak to that if there's any question.
Okay. So let's get a mover and a seconder for this and get it on the floor. So moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry, that the Council of the Township of Wellington North receive report OPS 2021-13 being a report on the 2021 sewage allocations, and further the council directs staff to work towards entering a sewage allocation agreement with the following developers in Mount Forest: 2574574 Ontario Inc. for 391 Main Street North project for 33 units, Marlana Homes for King Street East Newfoundland Street project for 24 units, 2574574 Ontario Inc. for Jack's Way project for 60 units, And further, that council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign a bylaw to enter into the agreements. And further, that council award 20 units of sewage allocation to the building department for distribution for infill lots within the village of Arthur. Within, yeah, the village of Arthur. And further, the council award 46 units of sewage allocation to the building department for distribution during the next year for infill lots within Mount Forest. Okay, with that, I'll open the floor for discussion. Can you just turn your screen off for a minute, Karen?
Yep. There.
Great. Okay, questions or comments from council? Dan, go ahead.
So in regards to the infill lots, there's 20 in Arthur and 46 in Mount Forest. Now, there's a reason for the extra 26 in Mount Forest, correct, Matt?
Go ahead, Matt.
Maybe you could explain that.
Yep, yeah, through you, Mayor Lennox, and good question, Councillor Yake. So on the chart that's included in that report, there's 3 projects that are infill lots, one on King Street East, one on Cork Street, and one on, what's the other one? I need a lux here, sorry.
Arthur.
One on Arthur Street. Those ones, because of the size of or the number of units that they'd be allocated, they fall with under the 12 unit threshold. And those would be projects that would typically be awarded just through the building department. Because there was 26 of them, and because that policy has changed in March of 2020, and it changed in April of 2021, we just brought them as part of the report for visibility. And we're asking for those additional 26 units just to be awarded to the building department, such that the building department sort of immediately doesn't use up the 20 units that they would typically be allocated by policy. So that's the reason for the 20 units versus the 46 units in Arthur versus Mount Forest. It's really just to account for those infill lots, but in a typical year going forward, those infill lots won't come before council. There's something that the building department would allocate just based on that sort of stock of sewage allocations that they'll maintain.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Steve, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. So how does this affect the allotments with when it's all infill versus what we were asked for tonight with the 3 different developers?
Matt, do you want to try that one? I'm not quite sure what Steve's asking, to be honest, but.
So if we grant all of these, does that effectively wipe out any of the ask for the developers from tonight?
Go ahead, Matt.
Yep, through you, Mayor Lennox. So certainly not from an Arthur standpoint. If a 15% of the available allocation represents 51 units. So those 51 units, that 15% is outside of the 20 units. So there's really, I think there's no impact in the Arthur situation. And the way the policy is really written is that the building department throughout the year can ask for additional units. It just so happens that this year the ask would be part of April. But I think because when we were drafting the policy, I think the intent was that infill lots are generally speaking seen as good use of allocations because they kind of tie into existing infrastructure. There is a provision in the policy that the building department may ask for more than the 20 on an annual basis based on what building activity looks like.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments? So I guess I have a couple of comments, and Matt, you talked about it as well. Based on the applications that meet our sewage allocation policy, there's still 51 units below the cap in Arthur that could be available or would be available if the applications met the criteria. can you comment on where we are relative to the cap for the Mount Forest? We're still below the cap there too, I believe. If you can just recap that for me.
Yep. Yeah, through you, Mayor Lennox. So the calculation that's on the page that's marked 107 in the agenda package, it shows a table with the Mount Forest wastewater treatment plant, and it speaks to the reserve capacity. 15% of that uncommitted reserve capacity represents 175 units. And if we gave consideration to 391 Main Street North, 773 Princess Street, King Street in Newfoundland, which is Marlena Homes, Jack's Way, and Wellington Street developments, that would represent 173 units, so 173 of the 175. The recommendation that's before you, and keeping in mind the recommendation is split into two parts now, it gives consideration to 4 of those developments, and kind of the recommendation that staff is making doesn't include 773 Princess Street, simply because there's a waiver that would be required as part of that policy, and that's why that developer was asked to come as a deputation.
Okay, but that one, if that one were to be included, it would still be under the cap that the policy established.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So, and then the other thing I just wanted to talk about a little bit too is while we talk about this policy as using this sewage allocation policy to constrain or control growth, allocating this number of units that could be used in a year or two is kind of unprecedented for us, in that the typical growth we've had is probably in the 20 to 30 units on an annual basis, and we're talking about on top of the infill ones, 173 in Mount Forest, and then there's another 51 in Arthur potentially available, but nobody met the criteria under the policy. So even though we're talking about constraining growth, this is still significantly more growth activity and development activity than we've seen in the past. This policy, while it does put some limitations on, is not looking to stop growth in any way, shape, or form. We're still accepting and promoting growth, but just trying to make sure that it doesn't come too quickly and to overwhelm us. So just wanted to comment on that. So, and then in the Arthur situation too, we have those 2 applicants who didn't quite meet the criteria that could easily utilize those 51 units that the policy contemplates under that cap. So, any other questions or comments? Okay, so then I guess we'll call that motion then. All those in favor?
Yeah, I think so.
That's carried. Thank you. So Karen, can you bring up that other resolution? And I think Dan, you're going to excuse yourself from this discussion.
Yep.
So the second resolution is there. Just before you deal with that, I do have the other resolutions also here for consideration from the
Okay,
delegation.
so we can deal with those after, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah,
Yeah, after Dan rejoins us.
correct.
Okay, so I'll moved by Sherry, seconded by Steve, that the Council of the Township of Wellington North direct staff to work towards entering a sewage allocation agreement with 2574574 Ontario Inc. for the Wellington Street East project for 24 units, and further that council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign a bylaw to enter into the agreements. Okay, I'll open the floor for questions or comments from council. Anybody have anything further they'd like to talk about here?
I'm okay, thank you, Andrew.
No.
Okay. All right, then all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. All right, so let's welcome Dan back. Okay, so now we have 3 proposed resolutions. Dan?
I'll move it.
Okay, can I have a seconder? Sherry? Okay, thank you. And we'll open the floor for discussion on that one. Steve, go ahead.
If we waive this clause, where does that leave us if they don't act on their allocations and they sit and drag their feet further and further?
Mike?
The purpose of the agreements, Councillor McCabe, are as we restrict the timelines associated with the allocations. That's the intent. Typically, we look at a 3-year period as kind of the max for the allocations. So if they didn't act within that time period, those allocations would go back into the pool, so to speak. They wouldn't be assigned to that property in perpetuity. That was part of the thinking around the policy and the agreements.
So just as a follow-up, then where do we, if we say we pass all of these, do we open the door a crack or open Pandora's box for future developers that come up and say, well, you waived procedure clause 2 for this one in specific? I can't speak to the other 2 coming up tonight. That kind of leaves us on shaky ground, I would suggest.
So I'll maybe jump in there, Mike, and I think your point is well taken, Councillor McCabe. I do think, however, that this is a brand new policy, and you know, not everybody is totally familiar with it yet who might be developing, and so I think that there is some flexibility that we could have without destroying the intent of our policy to give some of these some consideration. I would be less flexible about it as we go forward, personally, because I think the intent of the policy is clear. And actually, I'm not totally happy with the way it's worded either, because I think those applicants all need to meet those thresholds that are established in the policy, but I might be willing to be lenient on how quickly they need to meet them to be considered in this calendar year.
I could live with that as well.
Mike?
So a couple of comments, particular as it relates to this application and the deputation from Paulo. So Paulo's interpretation of the allocations is different than, I would say, the township, and specifically Dustin is on with us from Triton, and yeah, to their credit, we rely on Triton in terms of doing the annual report for us, and we asked Triton to kind of weigh in on what the equivalent residential units would be for Paulo's development. So Paulo's saying basically his request is, well, I only need two ERUs from you guys because this is an existing building that had its sewage allocation. We went to the trouble and troubled Dustin and Triton with trying to muddle through that a little bit to get us to a number where we're more comfortable at that 12 number. So of the 51 that are available, they're applying for 12 of those units. That's the way we interpret the application. And yeah, we give credit to Dustin and Triton for clarifying that for us from a staff perspective. The other part, and Mayor Lennox, I think you've leaned this direction a little bit, is if council chooses to consider these deputations and these requests, there's nothing that limits council from saying they're conditional on site plan approval, they're conditional on the zoning being approved, they're conditional on the subdivision agreement being entered into. Those are all options that you can consider. These are things that council controls. And I know that I understand the issue as it relates to one of the other ones that we'll get to in terms of the public process. Those are things you could consider. I'm not suggesting you need to, I'm just saying those are options. You could make the allocations conditional on them meeting criteria.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, comments? Sherry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I support the one, the former Queen's building, just because it's been an ongoing project. And it would just, you know, all of the work that the BIA and the chamber have done to rehabilitate the main street in Arthur, I think this is just the final piece. Like, let's get this development moving. They've done some significant work in the last little while. Let's push forward with this, in my opinion, and get the downtown core of Arthur, you know, the sort of the last piece in the puzzle, as it were, for now. I mean, there's going to be lots of other developments, but this one's been lingering for a while. And we all know that we've been getting phone calls, not specifically me so much, but I'm sure my counterparts in the lower parts, and as well as staff and yourself, Mr. Mayor, that would alleviate some more of these phone calls, I think. So that's sort of why I support moving forward with the 12 units that they're looking for.
Okay, thank you. Dan, I think I saw your hand.
Yeah, I agree exactly with what Sherry has said. I mean, we've agreed to, in our policy, we've agreed to release 15% of uncommitted units. We don't have to do that. I guess we don't have to release them. But, you know, here we have a development that's been on the main street of Arthur that's looked like hell for a number of years now. And if we don't provide the allocation, it may come to a halt once again. So I'd really like to see us move forward with it. I mean, it's you know, it doesn't maybe meet the policy per se, but we know that this document, this sewer allocation document, moving forward over is going to be a live document for years. It's never going to be a perfect document, and we're never going to be able to stay the course, I don't think, 100%. We're going to have to be able to make some adjustments on the fly if and when it's necessary. So I really do want to see it move forward. I really want to see that project completed. 3 years seems like a long time that they could sit on these. I didn't really get the impression that this project was going to really move forward with some expediency, but this may help it. So I'd certainly support the 12 units to get it going.
Thank you. Corey, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Lennox. And through you, I did just want to mention that should this project go forward, it would require some fairly significant upgrades as far as servicing goes. And we would like to take advantage of that, you know, during the Connecting Link project. I think it would be the time to do that. We certainly don't want to go back if we don't have to and dig up the street again to upgrade those services. So it certainly would be the time to at least get the proper servicing in there that's going to be required if and when this project does go forward.
Okay, thanks for that. Any other questions or comments? Mike?
Just one point of clarification, and I used the 3-year term as kind of our maximum. Certainly with this development, Councillor Yake, I think we'd be looking at a different term because it's not going to be phased, right? He's going to. So yeah, just for clarification, we would try to.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Mike.
Okay. Other questions or comments? Okay, does anybody want me to read that again, that recommendation? Okay, well, I'll call
the... Hold on.
Oh, Karen, you're putting that up? So here we have the recommendation again. That Council of the Township of Wellington North receives the deputation by Arthur Green Developments Inc. and further the council directs staff to work towards entering a sewage allocation agreement with Arthur Green Developments Inc. for 164 George Street project, 12 units, and further that council authorize the mayor and clerk to sign the bylaw to enter into the agreement and further that council waive procedure clause 2 as detailed within the township's policy 012-19 titled sewage allocation policy dated April 12th, 2021. With that said, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So we'll move on to the next one, and I'll read that one. The recommendation that Council of the Township of Wellington North receive your deputation by Cache Developments, Arthur Inc., and further that Council direct staff to work towards entering a sewage allocation agreement with Cache Developments, Arthur Inc. for Preston Street project for 39 units, and further that the Council authorize the Mayor and Clerk to sign the bylaw to enter into the agreement, and further that Council waive procedure clause 2 as detailed within the Township's 012-19 titled sewage allocation policy dated April 12th, 2021. And with, could I get a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Steve, seconded by Lisa. Open the floor for discussions on that. Steve, go ahead.
Again, kind of to echo what we were chatting about with the Queen Street location. I think this is the Cache is a great project. I know they're not probably going to be happy with the allotment that we're talking about. It's only just maybe about 20% of what they want to build there overall. But I think this is a great start for them as well. You know, when he answered Councillor Yake's question, they have a lot of work to do regardless if they put one house in or 207 all at once. So I think this will get them going, and it seems like we have commitment from him and his development, and I think this signals a commitment from us as a town and as a municipality to Marcus as well, that we're interested in doing business and growing that Preston Street development.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Any other questions or comments? Dan, go ahead.
I guess just to maybe Matt, I mean, Cache sounds like they've been a great developer to work with. They've been, you know, they went away and came back with some new ideas, and that certainly looks appealing. So, I mean, you know, if they're not, they may not be happy with the 39, but are you convinced that this will, that they'll move forward even with this amount? It's 39 allotments.
Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, through you, Mayor Lennox. I think Marcus expressed that there is some significant capital that needs to be built if he's putting in 39 units. So I don't know if I would be able to answer that question. I do think that Cache has been great to work with. And maybe, I don't know if Mike, if I would defer that, you might have additional comments related to that, but I would just lean on kind of what Marcus said tonight, Dan.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Mike?
Yeah, I think Cache, if they hear the 39 or when they hear the 39, we'll probably go back and look at the numbers, and they'll make a decision based on that. Because, yeah, as Marcus indicated, servicing that area is not going to be cheap for them, and if they're only assured 39, it'll become the economics of it for them. I'm sure will be the deciding factor, and I don't think we can blame them for that. So, and we don't know what next year will look like, and we don't know who else will be at the table next year too. And yeah, they're proposing 207, and as Councillor McCabe indicated, 39 is a long way away from 207. But the policy was not just about making sure people were using them, it was about controlling the growth in our community. And that's what it's doing in Arthur specifically.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Other questions, comments? Okay. Are members of council looking for any further restrictions on this than what's proposed in this resolution?
No, I'm not.
I'm good. I guess we'll have to see what they, like Mike said, we'll have to see what they come back with. But as it is written right now, and what's the motion on the table and with everything in it, I'm fine with it as well.
Okay. I guess I'll call for the vote then. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Now we'll move on to the last one. This is Archcon Group, Inc. And I'll read the recommendation that the Council of the Township of Wellington North receive the deputation by Archcon Group, Inc. And further, the council directs staff to work towards entering a sewage allocation agreement with Archcon Group, Inc. for 773 Princess Street project up to 32 units. And further, the council authorizes the mayor and clerk to sign the bylaw to enter into the agreement. And further, the council waive procedure clause 2 as detailed within the township's policy 012-19 titled Sewage Allocation Policy dated April 12th, 2021. Can I get a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Steve, seconded by Lisa. That will open the floor for discussion. Steve, go ahead.
Kind of piggybacking on what, again, what Councillor Yacus said with this one. Can we put that, like, do we need a clause in there that this has to come out to public so that people around that area know what's going on? Or is that already set up? Just for clarification, I guess, for that.
Mike, go ahead.
Darren will correct me if I'm too far wrong on this, but their proposal would require a zoning bylaw amendment, which would require a public process, and they'll also require site plan approval. So if council wants to even consider the allocations, my suggestion, and this is a suggestion, is that you could make them conditional on zoning approval. Which would mean that they would have to go through the public process of the zoning bylaw amendment before they would actually have the sewage allocations. Darren, am I way off base?
Nope, you've got it. You've got it exactly.
So I guess, can we add that in?
We could. I would probably would need a motion to amend it. Are you looking to move that amendment, Steve?
I could put it on the floor, sure. I'll move it. I don't know if there's going to be a seconder, but sure, I'll move it.
We're moving, Steve's going to be the mover to amend that, making it conditional on zoning approval.
We'll see if it goes.
Sorry, that the applicant obtaining
zoning bylaw approval.
Zoning by law amendment. So this is what the amendment is to the original resolution is going to be. So you have a mover, you're going to need a seconder.
And that should be, it should also read and that, should it not, Karen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Can you let me see people again?
Yes, I can do that.
Do I have a seconder for that amendment?
I want to ask a question.
Go ahead.
I just have such a hard time, like, how different is this removal of clause 2 than it is the 2 in Arthur? Like, it is different, right? Because they're not near, like, the other 2 in Arthur are closer than the one on Princess Street. And I just like I said before, I'm not opposed to it. I think it's a good location. It looks like a nice development, but I just have a hard time. I just have a hard time approving before the public process. It just doesn't sit well with me. And then I guess until that's done, I can't. It's just, again, like I said before, we're putting the cart before the horse here.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I wholeheartedly agree with you, Dan, in that, if you look at Cache as an example, there's a whole lot of servicing work that has to happen there before they can start doing anything, whereas that location for ArchCon is in a developed area. The services are primarily there. They could get their stuff lined up relatively quickly, and I think that's what their intention is to move fairly quickly on, and that's why they're asking for this consideration.
But are we opening the door, Andy, for this to come back from every possible development that comes forward? Are we opening that door to say, listen, you know, we want our allotments. We'll worry about the other stuff afterwards. Right? The allotments is the gold.
I don't disagree with you, Dan, but I think we already opened the door with the other two.
No, I don't think we did.
Anyhow, we have a mover for an amendment. If we don't have a seconder, then that amendment's going to die, and we're going to go back to the main motion. So I'll ask again, do we have a seconder for that amendment? Okay, I'm not seeing one. Oh, Lisa, are you the seconder for that amendment? Okay, so now we have a seconder for the amendment. We'll vote on the amendment then, and then we'll go back to the main motion.
Sorry, Mayor Lennox, who seconded that?
Lisa?
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So the amendment is to make it conditional on zoning bylaw approval, or the zoning bylaw amendment. Any further discussion on the amendment? Steve, go ahead.
Yes, Dan, if this amendment goes through, would that kind of put your at ease, or because they'll have to go through the public consultation, or?
It may, but I mean, again, you know, I mean, let's face it. I mean, it's going to be on the street tomorrow anyway, right? So it doesn't really put my mind at ease. I just, like I say, I think no.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the amendment? Okay, so all those in favor of the amendment?
1, 2, 3.
Are those opposed? That's carried. So we'll read the motion again with the amendment. So the Council of the Township of Wellington North received a deputation by ArchCon Group Inc. and further the Council directs staff to work towards entering a sewage allocation agreement with ArchCon Group Inc. for 773 Princess Street project up to 32 units. And further the Council authorized the Mayor and Clerk to sign the bylaw to enter into the agreement. And further the Council waive procedure clause 2 as detailed within the Township's policy 012-19 titled Sewage Allocation Policy dated April 12th. And that can you get that for me again, Karen? And that sewage allocation allotments be conditional on the applicant obtaining zoning bylaw amendment. So with that, we'll open that for further discussion. Go ahead, Sherry.
Yeah, so I agree with Councillor Yake. And I just don't think that this development is as far along as I'd like to see it. I mean, I supported the allocations for Cache. It'll be interesting to see what they do with those allocations. I think it's a good development and they're much further along. The first one that we passed was for me, was for a variety of other reasons. This one, I think, deviates from the policy more than I'd like to see. Even moving forward, knowing that this is a living document and we're not going to be able to capture every development and every developer, but this one we haven't had the public process. You know, this is sort of the first time it's been in front of council. So I just can't support allocations, sewage allocations for this development at this point. Looks like a great development, but not at this point, not for me.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, comments? Steve, go ahead.
If say this doesn't go through, maybe they'll back out of it. I don't know, kind of like what Mike had said about Cache. They'll have to figure out if it's viable for them as well. And if we don't, if it doesn't go through today, we have to push it off till April. Is that right? Like next April, sorry?
Yes.
Is that more comfortable for you, Dan? I don't know. I'm just trying to find, because I think it's a great development. I think it's a great use of the spot, and the infrastructure is pretty well, like you said, Mayor, pretty well there. And I know we always get calls, but yeah, just trying to see what we can do to get this rolling, I guess.
Sherry, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, so if we don't approve this evening and they get further along in their process, they can't bring a deputation back to council and ask? No.
Not till April.
I see Mike's head shaking back and forth, so, okay. That doesn't change my mind.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Yeah, this is a tough one. I hear loud and clear the concerns with, not having completed all the hurdles. We put those hurdles in that policy for a reason. However, this is a new policy that people are not yet used to. Where not every community has a policy like this. Lots of places would grant allocations multiple times throughout the year. I struggle with turning this one away till next April because I believe it's a good application in a location that desperately needs redevelopment from its previous use. The previous location was not really an asset to the neighboring community. This will be an asset to the community. It's near really important amenities. It's rental housing, which our residents continuously tell us that we need more of, and they need it yesterday because the demand for rental accommodations is really, really tight. So, they're still going to have to go through all the same processes with the zoning amendment. They're still going to have to go through the site plan process. The public's going to have their opportunity to have their say. All we're saying really is that we're going to consider giving them sewage allocation before next April. And so I think, we gave the others, I have to support this one too. So, any other comments? Okay, then we'll have to call the motion. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thanks, everyone. Okay. Our next item is 7A. This is a report in regard to licensed kennels. And I have a recommendation here moved by Lisa, seconded by Dan, that the Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North receive for information CLK Report 2021-12, being a report on licensed kennels in North Wellington. And with that, I'll open the floor for any questions or comments. Steve, go ahead.
Talking about allocations, we're not getting off allocations. It's just the species that has changed apparently. So, reading this report, like I have a hard time supporting this kennel approach. I know, again, we have a policy. It's fairly onerous that the applicants have to go through. I understand how they want to, make money off their farm, another farm income. But to have 36 kennels within about a 20-25 minute drive, maybe a 40-minute drive, I don't know how many more we need. And I'm wondering, I know we have the bylaw on the books, but is there a way, like, can we limit how many kennels we have and put it at a set finite number? And Andy, say you have a kennel and you close it down, then Mike could open one up. Is there a way that we can, I guess, amend it or massage it a bit? Because I know I know it's Kenilworth, but I don't want to be known for all the kennels in the area either. So.
Yeah, I don't have the answer, Steve. I think probably we'd have to have a legal opinion to determine how we do that. I mean, operating a kennel is a legal business. How we limit the number of those legal businesses within our jurisdiction is something I certainly don't know how we would go about doing it. I don't know whether staff have any insight into that or not.
Yeah, I know I don't either, but sorry. Yeah.
Karen?
I do know that our zoning bylaw permits it if you get a zoning bylaw amendment, and your consideration on an amendment to the bylaw, is it an appropriate use in the location? I don't know, and Darren knows more about, the zoning bylaw than I do, but I don't know if LPAT, whatever they're calling them these days, would support a decision made on something that is legal in our municipality. Like if you turn the bylaw down because you thought it was too many, so apply that same test to, I don't know, a pretzel store. Like, do we say that we're only going to have 2 pretzel stores in all of Wellington North? Or do you permit 35 of them and let the market bear? I don't know. I don't know that it would be something that would be upheld at LPAT. I wish Curtis was still, he was here with us just not that long ago, but
that's something we can ask in the future. I know we do have an application that will be coming back, I believe, at our next meeting, so we can certainly ask that question then as well. Any other questions or comments on this report? Steve, go ahead.
When would the Allens be coming back?
Alan Martin, you mean?
Or Alan Martin, sorry, yes.
I think it is the, just a second. I'm not sure if the notice got sent out in time for the 10th. I'm just checking our agenda chart, just a minute. Yes, the 10th.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Sherry, go ahead.
So I think one of the concerns I have when we get applications like this for kennels is sometimes we are trying to approve something that's maybe not already in compliance. The other issue I have is we don't have, like, for planning, we have the Wellington County Planning come and give us reports on the site. I think that would be beneficial as well if Rick could go out and inspect the site and have some kind of feedback and report on that as well. Just the fact that we take what the applicant says to be what he's going to do or what he has. I think that would help in future processes for me, is if there was some kind of detailed report on the because most of the time it's an existing building that they're going to use. If some type of inspection could be done, I think that might help with the process for me personally anyway.
So I'm a little puzzled because I thought that was already occurring. Were you looking just for more detail in a report, Councillor Burke? I'm just trying to clarify.
Well, I think I think that it would be beneficial if there was a letter stating, this, this, and this, because there have been a couple of these applications that there have been dogs on the property, and it's almost like they're looking to become in compliance with the bylaws as opposed to this being a new business. And I think that's part of the issue I have, is if there was some documentation from Rick, whether it's just a letter saying, I've been to the property, this is what I see, this is what I've observed. I'm not sure. That's just me. I just think it would help along the way. I know he does annual inspections, but I think it would help in the process for new kennels as well.
Okay, Karen?
So at the time when the applicant files the zoning bylaw amendment, they also file the application for the license, and that triggers Rick to go out. So he has been out to this site.
Okay.
But yes, we didn't provide a letter in the planning report, and so we could do that for the May 10th meeting. Specifically, you're looking for whether they can renovate the building to bring it into compliance?
Well, I think that's part of the issue. I mean, I go back to the application where they thought they were going to be able to have dogs on the second floor.
Right.
I mean, how do dogs come and go as they need on the second floor without any access to the outdoors?
Right, and that one didn't get approved, and
No,
we
it
did amend
didn't.
our bylaw, yeah, to prohibit that, for sure.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Okay, so we're receiving that report for information. So I'll call the vote then. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. So we're moving on in our agenda. We're on to notice of motion this evening. Does anybody have a notice of motion this evening? Okay, not seeing any. So we'll move on to community group meeting program report. Anybody have anything they'd like to report on this evening with regard to that? Steve?
As you saw in your package tonight, we had a SVCA meeting last week, and then we're having an executive meeting this coming Thursday. And that's all I've got for the community meeting.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Dan, I'm not looking to put you on the spot, but maybe the next meeting, could you give us an update on where the hospital project is at? Certainly that's an important one in the community, and I'd like to be up to speed on that, and I just feel I haven't been. So if you could provide an update, that'd be wonderful.
I'll get you some dates. I'll sit down with Dale, and we did get some dates. We had a meeting last week, and we saw some dates in regards to opening and moving and that type of thing, but I will firm up those dates and get them to you next meeting.
That'd be wonderful. Thanks. Lisa?
Sorry, I think I touched on most of the things as far as the chambers go, but I think I wanted to bring up just a couple more items. Of course, the Arthur BIA, a lot of stuff is all the connecting link going on, and of course, supporting the shopping Saturdays and working with the Arthur Chamber of Commerce to maybe take away some of, or take the burden off of them a little bit with some of the responsibilities that they had with regards to the downtown and its beautification. That really isn't a chamber mandate. The Mount Forest Chamber is having an upcoming meeting, and I'm not sure exactly when it is because they haven't circulated on that final date, I don't think, for updating their bylaws. So that is just to kind of keep up with the times, kind of a housekeeping kind of a thing. And that's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have anything they'd like to talk about? Okay, then I guess we'll move on to bylaws. So I guess got two bylaws this evening. The recommendation here moved by Dan, seconded by Lisa, that bylaw number 45-21 and 46-21 be read at first, second, and third time and enacted. Any questions or comments on those? Okay, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Oh, we have another cultural moment, and I, again, am not well prepared for that.
Do you want me to pull it up?
That'd be great, Karen.
Okay, just give me a second.
I must have missed that when I was going through my agenda.
I think, and Dale's here, he can speak to that, but I think the intent is they're gonna have one every month now. Is that right, Dale?
Okay.
That's the plan.
Okay.
So I better not be falling asleep at the switch.
I'm just pulling it up, just a sec.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, share screen. There we go. Ta-da!
Okay. So Mitch Kierstead comes from a large family of brothers and sisters who are all well-known Ontario artists, the most famous being his brother James. Kierstead paintings have been sought after for over 30 years and depict scenes of the Ontario countryside and common activities. Often bringing back fond childhood memories, they bring special appeal to purchasers of his work. His pieces are being displayed in private homes and galleries around the world. Mitch prefers to produce many of his works using a delicate knife technique with oils, creating a very realistic scene. Apart from being a successful artist, Mitch also runs a successful gift shop in Arthur, Eclectica, the gift store, from the Cultural Roundtable. So earlier this year, Mitch and Grace announced their retirement after serving Arthur and area residents for nearly 18 years. We encourage everyone to drop into Eclectica between now and summer or send them a message on social media to wish them all the best. Mitch has also indicated that he has no intentions of totally leaving the community, as he plans to continue to serve out his term on the board of directors of the Arthur Business Improvement Area Association. That's your cultural roundtable for April. Sorry, cultural moment. Thanks, courtesy of the cultural roundtable. Thank you. So we'll move on to our closed meeting session. So those of you who've been joining us, we'll say goodnight and we'll move into our closed session. So moved by Steve, seconded by Sherry, that Council of the Corporation of the Township of Wellington North go into a meeting at 10:21 p.m. It is closed to the public under subsection 239(2) of the Municipal Act 2001, specifically to deal with personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. We'll deal with the reports from CBO 2021-05, Building Department and Service Delivery, and we'll review the closed session minutes from April 12th, 2021. So we'll move into closed. All those in favor? That's carried. We're in closed session.
Just give me a minute. I have some people to pull out of the meeting.
Okay.
What do we have? We've got everybody. All right, let me stop recording.